Chapter 28. The highly anticipated immortal gathering of Lingjian School came to an end under the astonishment and disappointment of countless people. The immortal gathering lasted for more than a month, which fully demonstrated the demeanor of the top 5 sects of the Wanxian League. More than 1,000 elite youths from all over the 9 regions were eliminated at the Golden Bridge. Except for those who were not determined enough and stopped at the Carefree Peak, the rest of the elite youths had to go through several tests on the immortal path. Finally, only 3 of them stood out and joined the inner court. These 3 people's innate talent could not be considered excellent. Among them, Biyao surprisingly showed a 2nd-rank earthly spirit root, while the rest were only 3rd rank. However, after the Age of Chaos, natural spirit roots were scarce in the immortal cultivation world. Let alone 1st-rank heavenly spirit root, 2nd rank and 3rd rank were already extremely rare, so there was nothing to be picky about. In addition to these 3 people, Hai Yunfan received a personal letter of recommendation from the 2nd elder of the Spirit Sword sect, and thus went to the eastern border of the 10,000 Art sect. The rest of the more than 10 participants who persisted until the last trial also had their own lucky chance. Not long after they came down from the Spirit Sword Mountain, they were stopped by a large group of cultivators. All of them were elders and elites from various major immortal cultivation sects. Most of them were between 4th and 5th rank, and there were even 2 from 2nd rank sections. These people naturally came to pick up the leftovers. In the eyes of Lingjian School, these failed youths were still lacking in maturity. However, even the other 4 top sects saw this action of Lingjian School as a reckless waste of God's gift. These years, cultivators with natural talent were really rare. For the lower-ranked sects, any one of these failed youths could be the hope of their sect. For these failed youths, even if they couldn't be the tail of a phoenix, being the head of a chicken was not bad. In Lingjian School, they could at most become an inner court disciple, but in other sects, they could become the successor disciple. In addition to these people, the one who had the most lucky chance was Wang Lu. After using the Firmament Cloud Ancient Coin, Wang Lu was able to enter Lingjian School as he wished. Moreover, his identity was impressively a successor disciple, which was much higher than an ordinary inner court disciple. However, there was a problem. His master seemed to be a retard. It wasn't the first time he met the 5th elder of Lingjian School. The last time they met was at the end of the path of immortal ascension. Wang Lu had pierced through the Icewind Valley with his sword. Then, this elder had flown all the way to Wang Lu while crying. At that time, Wang Lu didn't know that the white-robed woman in front of him was an elder of the Heavenly Sword Hall, nor did he know that he would form an indissoluble bond with her in the future. If one had to talk about feelings, the only feeling he had was that this fellow's brain had some kind of disease. However, the Firmament Ancient Coin made him a true disciple, but he also had a retarded master. This fully reflected the truth of the immortal cultivation world. After the grand immortal ascension ceremony ended, Biyao and the others were led away by a few black and white disciples to the area where the other inner sect disciples of the Misty Peak resided. Wang Lu, on the other hand, was thrown out of the hall like a wild dog. He spent the entire afternoon under a tree in the shade. Only when dusk fell did a woman in white walk up to him. Hello? The woman in white had never considered accepting a disciple. The sect also didn't allow her to think about it, so she didn't know how to greet her own disciple. She looked at Wang Lu awkwardly. Seeing the latter's cold expression, she scratched her head awkwardly. According to the sect leader, from now on, I am your master. However, this is my first time accepting a disciple, so please be gentle. Oh no, in short, let's make do with each other. Wang Lu stared at the 5th elder in front of him and began to guess in his heart, could it be that the Lingjian School deliberately sent a retard to mess with me? Of course, the 5th elder didn't deliberately come to mess with him. On the contrary, she came to be a legendary teacher, and vowed to bring Wang Lu to heaven. Oh no, to heaven. The shortcomings of the 5th elder could be said to be too numerous to list, but she was very serious about her promise. Since she had promised the sect leader that she would personally train this child of destiny, then even if she had to abstain from alcohol and sex, she would still train Wang Lu, this child, into a talented person, even if Wang Lu didn't have the aptitude to cultivate. With such determination, the fifth elder found Wang Lu and put on a gentle face that was enough to make her fellow disciples' hair stand on end. If, at this time, Wang Lu knew the water curtain recording spell and recorded this scene, he would probably be able to sell it for tens of thousands of spirit stones in the sect. Unfortunately, at this time, Wang Lu didn't know how to cherish it. He just silently looked at his master, letting the awkward atmosphere spread. The fifth elder sneered in her heart, but her face was still kind. "Forget it, don't stand here like an idiot." While speaking, she untied the bamboo sword on her waist. The emerald green sword turned into a flat light, carrying the woman. "Let's go to my non-phase peak. I have already arranged a residence for you. From now on, you will follow me to cultivate." With that, the woman stretched out her hand. Wang Lu sighed and raised his own question. "Cultivate? Cultivate what? With my spirit root attribute, can I really cultivate?" Although his identity as a successor disciple was already set in stone, the change of identity could not change his spirit root attribute. In today's immortal cultivation world, the void spirit root was almost equal to a waste spirit root. A professional adventurer could not ignore the reality and dream about his own big dream. Therefore, even if Wang Lu could use the firmament cloud ancient coin to exchange for a miracle, in front of him, it was still a road leading to a bottomless abyss of death. When the crowd dispersed and those familiar and unfamiliar faces found their respective homes, Wang Lu's heart gradually cooled down and once again faced this unsolvable problem. If one were to say that he was disheartened, it was indeed a little. He still remembered that when he was 3 years old, he had read about the spiritual roots of cultivation in an ancient book for the first time. The book had written that there was a kind of person in this world who could naturally sense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. To others, this mysterious and unfathomable spiritual energy was clearly reflected in their eyes. For them, cultivation was as natural as breathing. That was the possessor of the heavenly spirit root. After the last age of chaos, the immortal cultivation world was almost extinct. And it just so happened that Wang Lu could always sense the so-called heavenly spirit root. Moreover, the sense was even clearer than what was written in the book. He once thought that this was a blessing brought by the comet, but now, it seemed that if the comet was deliberately created by someone, then it must be full of malice. It gave him an unprecedented spirit root, but it made him born in this kind of era. It was as if he had arranged for a fairy-like, gentle, virtuous, and well-off fiancé for himself, but he had also arranged for a homosexual identity for himself. There was nothing more tragic than this in the world, and the only thing he could do was to struggle for the firmament cloud ancient coin. Cultivation? With this spirit root, what could he cultivate? An expert mascot tutorial? Oh. It's rare to see an arrogant person like you show such a weak face. Wang Lu immediately became hostile. What the hell, you crazy girl, what are you saying to a 12-year-old boy? Humph, I'm cheering you on. The girl in white smiled, as if she didn't hear the comment of the crazy girl. You don't have to worry about cultivation at all. Since that idiot sect leader entrusted you to me. No matter what, I will let you embark on the path of cultivation. A mere void spirit root is not a problem for me. Although the girl in white made Wang Lu think that she had a brain disease, but at this time, after listening to her comfort, Wang Lu's mood was a bit better. Oh, well, I hope so. I am Wang Lu, from now on, I will cultivate with you. Then, Wang Lu firmly held the hand of the girl in white. The girl in white smiled sweetly. I am Wang Wu, from now on, I am your master. A bamboo sword turned into a green light, carrying the master and disciple to non-phase peak. The speed of the flying sword was not fast, so the master had enough time to briefly introduce some things to the disciple. The girl in white stood on the flying sword, stretched out her hand, and said, the spirit sword mountain that our Lingjian school occupies is the place where the spiritual energy in the Blue River region converges. From the outside, the spirit sword mountain looks like a straight sword, isolated, but the inside is divided into 12 peaks. Each peak is a paradise that cultivators yearn for, especially the Stellar Peak, Brilliant Peak, and Misty Peak, which are the highest, followed by the non-phase peak. However, at present, there are only 2 of us in the non-phase peak, so it doesn't matter if the spiritual energy is a bit poor, it's enough for you. Hearing this, Wang Lu's heart thumped. Whether the spiritual energy is rich or not, let's not talk about it. There are only 2 people in the non-phase peak. In other words, before this immortal gathering, this girl lived alone? Even if the Lingjian school had always been famous for its withered population, wasn't her popularity a bit too bad? However, in any case, having a bigger per capita housing area was not a bad thing. Moreover, Wang Lu didn't think that he would like to have a lot of people. One of the important reasons why he chose to participate in the immortal gathering of the Lingjian school was that, among the top 5 sects, the Lingjian school had the least number of people. The 5th elder's flying sword was not fast, but before long, it passed the Misty Peak and entered the boundary of the non-phase peak. At first glance, it was a surprise. People often said that the immortal cultivation world's paradise was too beautiful to behold. From the golden bridge at the foot of the mountain, along the immortal path, Wang Lu also appreciated the scenery of the carefree peak and the Misty Peak. The green trees were like a carpet, and the clouds and mist were luxuriant. It was indeed like a paradise on earth. Originally, he thought that the non-phase peak would be more tranquil and natural with only 1 person, but unexpectedly, what greeted his eyes was actually a dilapidated scene. What Wang Lu saw was a mottled, messy, and bare mountain. The green vegetation that should have covered the surface seemed to have been fiercely gnawed by some Taotai evil beast, revealing ugly yellow-brown scars. Compared with the other peaks around the non-phase peak, it looked like a desecrated corpse. Wang Lu looked at it for a long time, trying to figure out the meaning of this scene. Was this another way to verify the truth that the immortal path was impermanent? Or, oh, you mean the vegetation on the mountain? A few years ago, I had a headache because of the debt, so I chopped down the spirit plants on the mountain and sold them. Because the wholesale price was cut too much, it made people feel bored. When I came back, I was too lazy to spend money to buy seeds to cultivate new ones. As a result, it became like this. But it doesn't matter, in any case, it's a place where spiritual energy converges. After 300 or 500 years, it will naturally recover. No need to worry, no need to worry. No need to worry your sister, so this dog gnawing on the peak is your doing. As a peak master, you actually destroyed your own wall. This is basically the behavior of urinating and defecating in your own home. No wonder no one wants to accompany you. A dignified elder has been reduced to a leftover woman. The 5th elder suddenly sneezed. Wang Lu, are you scolding me? No, your way of doing things is so hateful, obviously, someone else is scolding you. Your analysis is also very reasonable. Following the tragic mountain path, the 2 of them soon saw a piece of flat land between the valleys. A simple and unadorned hut stood alone in the middle of the mountains. Rather than calling it a residence, it was more like a prison cell. Well, this is my home. Well, now it's also your home. Later on, you will live here with me. The conditions are relatively simple, but immortal cultivators don't care so much. The 5th elder's reason was high-sounding, but after experiencing the dog gnawing on the mountain, how could Wang Lu guess that even if this was originally a luxurious small town, it would still be wasted by this woman? Fortunately, although the remaining hut was simple and crude, at least it could be separated into several separate bedrooms, so that a dignified successor disciple would not have to sleep in the woodshed. After settling Wang Lu in the bedroom, the 5th elder thought for a moment, why don't you introduce yourself first? There was nothing much to say about Wang Lu's resume. He was just the son of a rich farmer from a mountain village in the Great Ming country. Apart from having a special spirit root and a strange way of thinking, compared to those who were born in rich families and experienced a lot at a young age, he was not worth mentioning. As for the 5th elder herself, she seemed unwilling to talk about it. You already know my name. At present, there are 10 elders in the Heavenly Sword Hall of the Lingjian School, and I am ranked 5th, which can barely be considered as neither high nor low. What I cultivate is my self-created non-phase method, which is also the name of the peak that I am in charge of. Upon hearing about self-created Heart Sutra, Wang Lu could not help but feel puzzled. Although he didn't know much about the immortal cultivation world of the 9 regions, only a few thousand words from the ancient book that he read when he was a child, and most of them were outdated. However, he had always heard the story of flying immortal flying sword told by some storytellers. This immortal cultivation world had always been more powerful the older it was. Legend has it that tens of thousands of years ago, each and every cultivator in the 9 regions had an incredible magical ability that could move mountains and fill the seas. In contrast, in today's famous Wanxian League, perhaps there were only a few dozen great cultivators who could move mountains and fill the seas. As one of the top 5 sects, the Lingjian school's history was not that long, but the founder of the school obtained the inheritance of an ancient great cultivator. Moreover, after thousands of years of accumulation, how could this dignified 5th elder cultivate a self-created Heart Sutra? Was she looking for novelty? Master, your disciple has a question. What is your cultivation level? Roughly what is it? His master very generously smiled and said, Taoist Master King Pill. Are you scared? Wang Lu was indeed scared. How could there be a spirit sword sect elder with such a low cultivation level? Even though he didn't know much about the immortal cultivation world, after being with Hai Yunfan for so long, he was imperceptibly influenced by him, so he still remembered some common sense. Today's immortal cultivation world was not like the time before the Age of Chaos when there were as many Yuanying stage cultivators as dogs. In the entire 9 regions, the number of deity stage and above, not including experts, could be counted. Yuanying stage cultivators could be called old monsters, but that was only limited to those remote places. No matter how weak the immortal cultivation world was, there were still experts. At present it was known that the one with the highest cultivation level was the sect leader of Xingjing sect, Hichu Daoren, who was already at the peak unity stage, one step into the Mahayana stage, and his immortal tribulation was just around the corner. Among the top 5 sects, the leaders of 10,000 Arts sect, Kunlun Immortal sect, and Royal Soldiers sect were also at the unity stage. Only the Lingjian school's Feng Yin Daoist master had a slightly lower cultivation level, but in any case, he was still a deity stage expert. The sect leader had a deity stage cultivation level, so even if the strength of the other elders was one level lower, they should still be at the peak Yuanying stage. This 5th elder was in the middle of the elders. This King Pill's cultivation level was really eye-catching. Could it be that during menstruation, his strength was halved? Then, Master, what is the cultivation level of the other elders? Facing Wang Lu's suspicious eyes, the 5th elder was completely unaware of it. Yuanying stage. Except for that old fool sect leader, there's no other deity stage. Really shameful. You, a King Pill cultivator, have the nerve to say this. Chapter 29. However, Wang Lu was quite open-minded. After all, he was a King Pill. If he was placed in the nearby Gentle Cloud Mountain or White Dragon Temple, Taoist Master King Pill could definitely become an elder with real power. As for those who entered the Carefree Peak at the same time as him, those who entered the Misty Peak at the same time were taught by more senior disciples on their behalf. Wang Zhong, Zhu Qin, and the others who entered the Misty Peak at the name of Master was second elder Lu Xian. However, Lu Xian had to lead 37 inner court disciples, so the efficiency could be imagined. Usually, the ones who mainly taught were those senior black and white disciples, who were not even as good as this gold core elder in front of him. After the 2 sides finished their self-introduction, Master said, "According to the rules, now I should take you to do a super troublesome apprenticeship ceremony, probably something like kowtowing and swearing. Are you interested?" With sincerity and novelty, Wang Lu said, "No." "Well, I also don't have one, so let's skip this step and go directly to the next one." Wang Lu was curious. "The next one?" Master nodded seriously. "Yes, it's time to eat. Let's go eat. Isn't your change of direction a bit too sudden?" Don't worry, at least I'll treat you today. The implication is that tomorrow I'll have to rely on myself. Our non-phase peak is rich in natural resources. There are pheasants, wild ducks, hares, and wild boars in the mountain. You won't starve to death. Are you practicing the Savage Heart Sutra? Along the way, his master, along with her new disciple, left non-phase peak on her flying sword and flew unsteadily toward the carefree peak. This was also a helpless thing. His master claimed to have King Pill's cultivation base and had not eaten for many years, so she didn't have a kitchen or cooking skills. Unless Wang Lu was willing to eat the wild boars and hares that she hunted, he could only go to the carefree peak for a meal. Wang Lu didn't know if the Grand Elder King Pill would feel hot after coming to an outer sect disciple's cultivation area for a free meal. But when Wang Lu stepped down from the flying sword and faced the countless people pointing at him, he did feel a bit embarrassed. Look, that seems to be the newcomer recruited for this great immortal ascension assembly. Hey, weren't all the rookies taken away by Ninth Elder? Who was this? Could he be an inner disciple? Oh, I know about this. I heard that a peerless genius had appeared in this immortal gathering, and he was directly promoted to a true disciple. The woman who brought him here seems to be his master and also an elder of the sect. Holy sh*T, an elder and a true disciple? What is such a high and mighty person doing here? Who knows? Maybe it's to experience the people's livelihood, or maybe it's some strange cultivation. They seem to have gone to the back of the arena. Isn't that the cafeteria behind the training field? Look, they really entered the cafeteria. They even ordered a dish. A plate of fish-flavored shredded pork, a plate of stir-fried shredded potatoes, a plate of double-cooked pork, and 2 bowls of rice. What's the profound meaning of this? Look, they started to eat. They're using chopsticks. He picked up a piece of fish-flavored shredded pork. He removed all the shredded carrots. What a unique way to eat. I'll write it down for the time being. Oh, the elder also moved her chopsticks. She ate the double-cooked pork. What's the profound meaning of this? They've finished eating. The plate is so clean. There are only shredded carrots left. They flew away. Their figures are so cool. The atmosphere of the audience was generally like this, full of joy and surprise. As the focus of attention, Wang Lu felt as if he was being watched by countless people, and the feeling was actually quite cool. Looking at his master, who was also calm and collected, Wang Lu finally began to recognize this woman in white from the bottom of his heart. Because of this shamelessness, they indeed had the fate of master and disciple. After the free meal at the Carefree Peaks cafeteria, it was already night time when he returned to the non-phase Peaks hut. Wang Lu, who was born in the wilderness, had never experienced the rich nightlife since he was a child, so he quickly became sleepy. But before he fell asleep, his master pulled him back. Wait a minute, let's do a small test before going to bed. What the hell, there's a night study in the Spirit Sword Mountain. Don't worry, it'll be done soon. I want to better tailor a cultivation plan for you. After all, I need to have a more detailed understanding of you. It's not enough to just rely on your performance on the immortal path. Wang Lu thought about it and felt that it was reasonable. Please give me the test. Okay. Then, his master took out a thick stack of paper from an unknown place. On the paper, there were densely written words and drawings. This is my carefully designed test. There are 2 parts, one is a comprehensive ability test, and the other is a personality test. It can accurately and comprehensively estimate your immortal cultivation potential. Please complete the test within 1 hour. The countdown starts now. When Wang Lu bent down in front of the table and began to read the test paper, he was immediately startled. What the hell is this? The first question of the comprehensive ability test. The truth of the Great Way is indescribable. The ethereal immortal path that we pursue is even more indescribable. The cultivators in the past, including many Taoist masters, patriarchs, and great immortal cultivators, all said so. Their tone was 70% __ and 30% __. However, then again, if it couldn't be accurately described in words, how could the method of immortal cultivation be passed on? How could it be carried forward? Fill in the underlined part in turn, and the most appropriate one was, a proud regret b. Helpless sadness c. Sentimental complaint d. Proud regret. What the f***ck is this? This question is definitely familiar, right? There must be some kind of resentful spirit causing mischief. Before he met that comet, he had been tormented by that broken thing for a long time. He didn't expect that in the 9 regions, where the immortal path was flourishing, he still couldn't get rid of it. Or could it be that this world has been occupied by some preemptive predecessors? Master, this question. How did you come up with it? Hey, what's wrong? What's wrong with this question? Nowadays, almost everyone in the immortal cultivation world does it like this. I just made a little innovation. Almost everyone does it like this. When I studied the 4 books and 5 classics from the teacher, it was not like this. Alas, you have already finished the immortal path and become a disciple of an immortal cultivation sect. Don't entangle yourself in the knowledge of the mortal world that is thousands of years behind. The immortal cultivation world has its own rules, which are completely different from the mortal world. The templates of these 2 sets of questions were gradually formed after hundreds and thousands of years of exploration. Just do it with ease. Hearing the hundreds and thousands of years of exploration, Wang Lu felt a bit relieved. It seemed that the strangeness of the immortal cultivation world was not caused by some strange people, but rather, a problem with the system. After calming down, Wang Lu turned his attention back to the test questions. This familiar routine had awakened his long-dormant instincts. Not long after, he entered a state where he forgot about himself and his surroundings. His pen moved as if it was flying, easily solving all the tricky and strange questions, causing his master, who was observing from the side, to click his tongue in amazement. After a while, as Wang Lu finished more than half of the comprehensive ability test questions, the face of the woman in white was filled with awe. Wang Lu's speed and accuracy in solving the questions were too high. Especially towards the end, those graphic reasoning questions and numerical calculation questions were solved as smoothly as floating clouds and flowing water. This had already far exceeded the limits of a normal person. Even if he had received guidance from a famous teacher in the mountain village and was proficient in the meaning of the classics and poetry, that knowledge was completely useless in this set of questions. Moreover, he did not have any cultivation and his soul was weak. He definitely did not have the ability of a brilliant cultivator to have a mind as fast as lightning and a photographic memory. Ah, so it is true that he was born with knowledge? No wonder he is the child of destiny with the void spirit root. I really did not misjudge him. The more the woman in white looked, the more delighted she became. Originally, Wang Lu's void spirit root was indeed a difficult problem, but if this child had such intelligence and talent, then it would be much easier to solve. That's enough. This is enough. After saying that, the woman in white pressed her palm on the paper, interrupting Wang Lu's enthusiastic swimming in the sea of questions. Wang Lu raised his head and frowned, as if someone had interrupted his fun, and his heart was filled with dissatisfaction. I have already fully understood your situation, so there is no need to waste any more time. Your aptitude is not bad, and you can truly inherit my mantle. Wang Lu said, I really don't want to inherit your mantle, little King Pill, but who asked my void spirit root to be in the way? King Pill it is, King Pill it is, I can make do with it. Since they were talking about cultivation, the woman in white's expression became especially serious. She sat cross-legged in front of Wang Lu and asked in a deep voice, Wang Lu, in your opinion, what is the purpose of cultivation? Several answers suddenly popped up in Wang Lu's mind, but he did not know which one to choose. Considering the special nature of this fifth elder, Wang Lu asked tentatively, for the sake of being arrogant and cool? In the end, the master slapped the table and stood up. Soulmate. After being stunned for a while, he corrected himself. Oh, no, don't talk nonsense. How could it be for such a vulgar purpose? Think about it carefully. Thus, Wang Lu guessed again. For the sake of ascending to the immortal world? Alas, that is to say, after the age of chaos, there has not been a precedent of successful ascension. So many talented people did not succeed. How do you expect those trash with third or fourth grade spiritual roots to survive? Aren't they destined to do useless work? Then what are they still cultivating for? Then, for longevity? At present, the oldest immortal in the immortal world is the South Pole Immortal Wang of Kunlun Immortal Mountain. He is 359 years old and nicknamed Turtle. Although he has a long life, his main purpose is to be exhibited and studied by others. Do you really think that's cool? Master, just tell me the answer. However, the woman in white spread out her hands. Actually, I don't have an accurate answer. There are thousands of cultivators, and the path of cultivation is also innumerable. Even the Great Tao has more than 3,000. Different people embark on different paths, of course, they will have different purposes. How can I summarize it in one sentence? Then just now, were you lying about the number of words? No, what I want to say is, no matter what your purpose of cultivation is, if you want to achieve it, there must be a basic condition. Being handsome? The woman in white sneered. Master, just say it, I won't make trouble. Oh, if you want to go on the path of cultivation for a long time and reach the end of your ideal, the most important thing is that you must be hard enough. Wow, Master, you're so bad, saying this kind of inappropriate topic in front of a 12-year-old boy. When I say hard enough, I mean your life is hard enough, your cultivation is hard enough, and you can withstand layer upon layer of tribulations. Just in the process of cultivation, the heavenly tribulations of several stages are enough to make a small half of the cultivators turn into ashes. In addition, there is the omnipresent human tribulation, which is even more difficult to guard against. Don't look at the Wanxian League, which claims to unify the 9 regions immortal cultivation world. In recent years, the crime rate in the immortal cultivation world has been high. Not to mention those evil sects and devil sects, even among the cultivators of the orthodox sects, there are many filthy people. Backstabbing is a common occurrence. Looking at his master's indignant face, Wang Lu nodded very hard. Yes, I can see that. In short, the most important thing in cultivation is to be hard enough. A lot of people advocate strong attack power or peerless speed. But all of them are evil. If you can't keep your life, no matter how fancy it is, it's all just a fleeting cloud. What Master said makes sense. Wang Lu really agreed with his master's words. Especially considering this person's temperament and behavior, if he didn't practice good life-saving skills, it would be bad. Good, you're indeed worthy of being my favorite disciple. You've already understood the first truth of the immortal cultivation world. Today, you should go rest. Starting tomorrow, I will officially teach you how to cultivate. Chapter 30. The sun rose and the moon set. Spring left and autumn came. In the blink of an eye, 2 years had passed. It was still the Spirit Sword Mountain, still the non-phase peak, still the mountain that looked like it had been bitten by a dog. 2 years of time did not leave too many traces on the non-phase peak. However, facing the mountain breeze and the early morning light, this secluded and quiet place was a bit livelier than 2 years ago. In the valley surrounded by mountains, there was a long and winding mountain path. A youth dressed in a red and white Taoist robe was slowly running along the path. His speed was not fast, but every step he took left a footprint. He was running very steadily. More than an hour later, the youth had run around the non-phase peak, and then walked up the stairs and returned to his starting point, which was in front of a small cabin in the valley. Master, morning exercise is over, please start the meal. The room was silent. The youth outside the door sighed and pushed the door to enter. He saw a bowl of porridge, a plate of vegetables, and a plate of sliced meat on the dining table. Of course, they were all king cold. As for his amiable master, who provided all his food and lodging, he was currently sleeping like a dead dog in his bedroom, reeking of alcohol. The youth frowned, sniffed in front of the bedroom, and then cursed, F***ck me, isn't this the third-rank cold spirit spring wine? 500 spirit stones per pot, does she plan to ask the sect leader for credit again this month? No wonder the recent food is rarely greasy, this B***** really took my subsidy to drink. Although he cursed, after 2 years, the youth had already adapted to the current situation. He hurriedly swept the wax-tasting breakfast into his mouth and then went back to his bedroom to prepare for his daily routine training. The bedroom furniture was simple, a bed, a table, and a stool. In addition, there was a particularly conspicuous large wooden barrel. The barrel was half filled with water, and a few herbs floated on the water, adding a grassy fragrance to the room. The youth took off his red and white Taoist robe and soaked naked in the barrel. The chill of late autumn had already soaked this barrel of water, but the youth was not affected at all. He quietly soaked in the barrel without saying a word. The medicinal bath was, of course, designed by his master. The intention was unclear, and the composition of the medicinal bath was also unclear. As for the effect, it was still unclear. However, this was an important lesson that his master had repeatedly exhorted, so it could not be neglected. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, the youth got up, wiped himself clean, put on his red and white Taoist robe, pushed open the door, and went out. After the training at the non-phase peak, the next stop was the Misty Peak. Wang Lu had been in Lingjian school for 2 years, so he frequently went in and out, so he recognized them as disciples of the Misty Peak. At this time, they were on duty at the foot of the mountain, doing the Misty Peak's daily training. Wang Lu had been in the Spirit Sword sect for 2 years, so he often went in and out on a daily basis. He recognized them as disciples of the Misty Peak. At this time, they were on duty at the foot of the mountain, doing their daily tasks. The senior disciples of the Spirit Sword sect would be assigned similar tasks within the sect, such as collecting herbs, guarding the mountain gate, refining elixirs, and so on. These 2 people had entered the sect many years earlier than him. At this time, they had already reached the peak of the foundation establishment stage, and the slightly older one was already close to the Shudan stage. According to the general standards of the immortal cultivation world, they could be regarded as talented experts, and their seniority was usually different. But according to the rules of the Lingjian school, unless one succeeded in the King Pill and could be crowned with the title of Enlightened Master, if an inner disciple met a direct disciple, no matter how early he joined the sect, it was necessary to call him senior brother, just like how an outer disciple met an inner disciple. Therefore, when the 2 of them saw Wang Lu's red and white Taoist robe, they cupped their fists and greeted Wang Lu. "Senior brother Wang Lu, are we going to use the ground shrinking array to ascend the mountain?" Wang Lu raised his hand to return the greeting and smiled at the 2 men. "That's right." Then, he walked past the 2 of them. With a single step, he crossed a long distance and arrived in front of Ethereal Peak's Tin Cloud Hall. The Tin Cloud Hall was located in a flat area halfway up the Misty Peak. It was an important cultivation ground for all the disciples of the Lingjian school. No matter if it was an inner disciple, an outer disciple, or a true disciple, they all had to learn important lessons in the Tin Cloud Hall. Culture class. This was another surprise to Wang Lu when he ascended the mountain. Once upon a time, in his imagination, the cultivation world was a place where the strong preyed on the weak, a place where killing was decisive. All the sects should be trying their best to stimulate their disciples to cultivate and at the same time collect resources to strengthen their forces. As for the Lingjian school, a declining sect that was on the verge of collapse as one of the top 5 sects in the Wanxian League, they should be working hard and cultivating with all their might. But in reality, that was not the case at all. Not even 2 days after Wang Lu ascended the mountain, he was arranged to go to the Tin Cloud Hall to receive culture education together with the blue and black and white disciples of the same batch. Education content? That was a wide variety and it was hard to explain in a few words. Other than the most basic and necessary literacy, there was also mathematics and logic, foreign dialects, the history of the 9 regions, the etiquette of the cultivation world. According to the propaganda of the Lingjian school, this was called quality education. Nowadays, many sects in the cultivation world only paid attention to the cultivation realm of the cultivators and their profound magical power. They wished that they could use all their time to meditate in seclusion or temper themselves. However, they ignored the comprehensive quality of a cultivator. The term comprehensive quality sounded empty, but its importance could be understood by giving a few examples. For example, the general knowledge of history. If someone asked you which 3 great ancient immortal kingdoms were, and you answered Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand, then you would be punished by the disciplinary elder. In addition, the importance of etiquette class was self-evident. Bragging to the people of the Beast Master School about how delicious the dog meat hot pot was and treating the people of the true religion to eat pork stewed with vermicelli. It was a miracle that this kind of person didn't get beaten to death when he went out. Then there was the geography of the 9 regions. In the future, when they left the mountain to travel, they had to know where the rich resources were, where the ancient immortal's cave might be hidden, and where the powerful monsters lived. If they couldn't figure it out, they might plunge into the gathering place of the Kunlun slaves and get killed by their dark-skinned friends. Nowadays, there were a lot of low-level cultivators in the immortal cultivation world. However, as one of the top 5 sects, Lingjian school disdained such people. In the words of the sect leader, if the cultivation level of the disciples was high, then the quality must be even higher. In the words of the 5th elder, even if the disciples' cultivation level was not as good as that of Xingjing sect or Kunlun immortal sect, at least they could brag about their comprehensive quality, so that they wouldn't be too disgraceful in the Wanxian League. In any case, the quality education of Lingjian school had been vigorously carried out since 100 years ago. Now, it had formed a quite mature education system. Even if the disciples didn't understand or even didn't support it, they had no choice. Of course, Wang Lu himself was willing to endure this hardship. The reason? The reason was very simple. As a disciple of the Ting Cloud Hall, in the past 2 years, Wang Lu's achievement in culture was overwhelmingly strong. Not to mention poetry, which was something that Wang Lu was already familiar with before he was 10 years old, even if it was a knitting course that caused countless male cultivators to roll on the floor in pain, Wang Lu still got an A+ grade. In Wang Lu's own words, this was called the persistence of achievement. However, in the eyes of countless male students, this was called the despicable shamelessness of racking one's brain to please the senior and junior sisters. In fact, there were many people who were disgusted with the quality education. At least, the newcomers who entered the mountain with Wang Lu were quite dissatisfied with this. Especially toward Wang Lu, the top student of Spirit Sword sect, they were gnashing their teeth in hatred. Perhaps some people would say that in the immortal cultivation sect, high cultivation level was the king, so it didn't matter how high Wang Lu's cultural class score was. It was too important, because the cultural class was the embodiment of intelligence. Entering the mountain at the same time, but the cultural class score was as different as heaven and earth. Didn't that mean that in front of Wang Lu, these proud sons of heaven were just monkeys? Ha ha ha, some time ago, I just succeeded in drawing spiritual energy into my body, so I'm already a dignified chi cultivating stage cultivator. I wonder what your cultivation level is? Hello monkey. My master just rewarded me with an 8th rank magical tool. What did your master give you? Hello monkey. I just learned a divine walking technique. Hello god monkey. As the top student of Spirit Sword sect, Wang Lu had long been accustomed to this kind of verbal sparring, and he never got tired of it. And his biggest opponent was, of course, a certain crown prince of the great Ming country, who had shown extraordinary talent after entering the mountain. In the past 2 years, the number of times the two of them quarreled had already broken through the sky. However, today was still fine. When he arrived at the Ting Cloud Hall, he didn't see the figure of Zhu Qin and the others. This was also a matter of course. Today's course in the Ting Cloud Hall was Professional 9 Regions History. Only those who passed the Advanced 9 Regions History class with an A grade or above could continue to study this course. However, among the cultivators in the same class, no one could get such a high evaluation. Usually, they had to repeatedly study the advanced 9 regions history class 2 or 3 times before they could get an A-grade evaluation. As for those senior disciples in the sect, there was no lack of history experts. When Wang Lu arrived, there were already 20 to 30 people gathered inside and outside the Ting Cloud Hall. All of them were professional history students, which was quite a sizable number. These people might not necessarily be true history enthusiasts, but Lingjian School, which advocated quality education, had set quite generous reward conditions for the cultural course. For example, if one could successfully pass the assessment of professional 9 regions history, one could get 500 sect points, which could be exchanged for a high-rank magical tool. And if one could get an A-grade evaluation, the reward would be more than 1,000 points, which was extremely generous. Wang Lu casually calculated his huge amount of points, which was about to become an astronomical number, as he stepped inside. The hall was neatly arranged with several rows of desks and praying mats, which could accommodate about 70 to 80 people. But of course, it was not full. In addition to 3 or 4 inner court disciples, there were more outer court disciples from the Carefree Peak wearing blue and white Taoist robes. The Lingjian school had a difference between the inner court disciples and the outer court disciples. Inner court disciples had more ways to earn points, so they did not pay as much attention to the cultural course as the outer court disciples. Although the Lingjian school required the inner court disciples to pass the corresponding level of assessment in many of the courses, it was not so demanding that it be a professional course. Those who came to the professional course were either true history enthusiasts, outer court disciples who were eager to be distracted, or, like Wang Lu, who came to seek a sense of superiority in IQ and obsession with achievement. Not long after, the front row of the hall was basically full, but the first row was empty. That was the special seat for the red and white successor disciples. Unfortunately, today, only Wang Lu came, and none of the other successor disciples came. In fact, during the 2 years of teaching here, Wang Lu had only met the other successor disciples less than 10 times, and they were just nodding acquaintances. He couldn't even call out the names of some of them, and he was not as familiar with them as some black and white Taoist and blue and white Taoist. After all, the Lingjian school had the loosest rules for the successor disciples, and the number of successor disciples was also the least. But this was also good. Wang Lu sat down in the middle of the first row, and then greeted the surrounding disciples. Not long after, the teacher who was teaching the class arrived. Chapter 31. Spirit Sword Mountain, Misty Peak, Ting Cloud Hall. The professional 9 regions history class began on time. The teacher who was teaching the class entered the door precisely on the dot. That person was stepping on a 7-colored glow and wearing a dazzling black crystal dress. As soon as she appeared, she almost blinded everyone's eyes. At the same time, there was a burst of warm applause and cheers in the Ting Cloud Hall. "Hello, 9th Elder." "Hello, Teacher Hua." "Teacher Hua, we love you." The person who came was the leader of the Carefree Peak, the 9th Elder of the Heavenly Sword Hall, and the youngest female elder in the sect, Hua Yun. Although she was an elder, her lively and pretty appearance seemed to be only 16 or 17 years old. Coupled with her sweet and moving smile, she looked like the girl next door, exceptionally amiable. Coupled with Hua Yun's lively personality, she didn't have the arrogance of an elder. Thus, her popularity among the younger disciples was very high, which could be said to be the best in the Spirit Sword Mountain. This was also the biggest reason why the professional 9 regions history class could gather more than 20 students. The other professional 9 regions geography class taught by Lu Xian only had 5 or 6 students, which was very dismal. "Good morning, students. Today, I'm here to teach you again." The 9th elder smiled and waved her hand to greet the disciples. She walked to the podium and put down a thick book. Everyone, please sit down and be quiet. Those who haven't eaten breakfast can sit in the back row and eat quietly when I'm not paying attention. Those who need to go to the bathroom can get up and leave at any time, but please don't disturb other students. Then, Please open your textbook. While speaking, Huayun slightly waved her hand. In the Tin Cloud Hall, a book appeared on the desk of each disciple. The cover was written, Professional 9 Regions History. Below it, there was a small line of words, Lingjian School. After the disciples got the textbook, they turned to the designated position and waited for Huayun's explanation. In the last class, we just finished talking about the glorious end and introduced several talented cultivators who were born at the wrong time. The next chapter is the Age of Chaos. The whole content of the Age of Chaos is quite depressing. Many popular heroes will fall in this chapter, such as Patriarch Peng Lai, Taoist Master Miao Shi. In any case, I feel very uncomfortable. So, let's speed up the lesson and strive to let them all die today. In the next class, I will talk about the revival of all living things and introduce some new heroes, including our Lingjian school's ancestor. After he finished speaking, there was a roar of applause from the audience. Good. Long live Ninth Elder. Long live the Ninth Elder. Huayun smiled sweetly and said, I love you guys too. Unexpectedly, the Professional 9 Regions History class is such a boring course, yet so many people came to listen to it. I'm really happy and moved. But, our time is limited, so don't mess around, I'm going to start now. The Tin Cloud Hall suddenly fell into silence. Only Huayun's sweet voice lingered in their ears. Until today, there is no clear analysis of the cause of the so-called Age of Chaos. There were too many changes in the world in that era. It's hard to say which was the cause and which was the effect. Students who are interested can read the relevant materials by themselves. There are many in the library of our Lingjian school. However, this was not the main point today. In short, because of various reasons, more than 6,000 years ago in the 9 regions, the surrounding spiritual energy suddenly underwent an abnormally drastic change. To what extent was the drastic change? It was probably equivalent to the astral winds of the 9th heaven falling to the ground and blowing them away. What was even more fatal was that when a cultivator reached a certain realm, they would be able to communicate with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth all the time. The sudden changes in the outside world can still be resisted and adapted through various means, but the changes in the Age of Chaos were not only violent, but also lasted for a full 200 years. After 200 years, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth dried up, and the cultivation environment changed beyond recognition. At this point, a trace of sadness appeared on Huayun's face. In the face of the changes in the world, those cultivators with great magical ability seemed fragile. The peerless geniuses born in the glorious end of the era that we talked about in the last class were the first group of victims. Their cultivation progress was the fastest, and their cultivation method was top-notch, dream level. Their ability to communicate with the surrounding spiritual energy was the strongest, and they could be said to have a boundless future. However, when the Age of Chaos came, all these advantages became a burden. Once the outside world changed, they were the first to collapse. Then, as you can see in the textbook, your favorite Han Zishuang unfortunately fell in the first year of the Age of Chaos. At that time, she had just reached the unity stage, which was the time when she was praised as a quasi-true immortal. Huayun looked up and found that the hall had become somewhat gloomy. She sighed and said, well, if I continue to talk about this part, it would be too painful, so I'll speed up the progress a bit. The time in the class passed very quickly, and before long, Huayun had already reached the end of the lecture in one go. Thus, Taoist Master Qi Yin, who had shaken the immortal cultivation world for thousands of years, ended his glorious life in despair and pain. He was also the last great cultivator to die after the Age of Chaos, due to the exhaustion of spiritual energy, leading to Qi deviation. After Taoist Master Qi Yin, no matter how much the cultivators deceived themselves, they had to admit that after the changes in the world's spiritual energy, most of the dream-level mental cultivation methods could no longer be cultivated. Forcibly cultivating them would lead to Qi deviation, and even the gods would find it difficult to save them. Since even Taoist Master Qi Yin was no exception, there was no need for others to try. As a result, for the next 100 years, there was no large-scale qi deviation of cultivators. But at the same time, more than half of the top-notch cultivation methods in the immortal cultivation world were lost. Of course, it may sound like a pity, but if it was a cultivation method that would lead to death, it would be better to lose it. Well, this chapter of the Age of Chaos ends here. At this point, a burst of warm applause sounded from the audience to mark the end of this wonderful history lesson. The lesson of the Age of Chaos was not easy to teach. More than 6,000 years ago, the Age of Chaos, which caused the immortal cultivation world to fall apart, lasted for 200 years. During this period, the spiritual energy in the sky was chaotic, and countless cultivators died from qi deviation. As a result, the old order collapsed. The immortal cultivation world was in chaos, and the people were plunged into misery and suffering. During these 200 years, more than 80% of the cultivators fell. More than 90% of the sects returned to dust. Until today, 6,000 years later, the immortal cultivation world had not been restored to its former glory. Of course, it was difficult to leave an intuitive impression on people with such empty words. How miserable was the Age of Chaos! From this point alone, it could be seen. In order to speed up the progress of the lecture, Huayun greatly omitted the content of the teaching material, compressing it to the limit. In the end, the hundreds of pages, which should have been divided into 3 classes and arranged for a large number of after-class assignments, were turned into a reading of the list of the dead. Elder Yuanyue, Patriarch Penglai, Daoist Master Fangzhen, Zen Master Xianyun, Elder Mingjiang, Daoist Master Miao Shi. Demon Venerable Lai Yang, Sword Immortal Zi Li, Fairy North River, Daoist Master Snow. Even so, this lesson still took more than an hour. As a Yuanying stage elder, Huayun's meridians were deep and profound, so she regarded the reading of the list of the dead as nothing. There was no need to elaborate on how tragic the list of the dead was. In fact, this method of teaching the list of the dead was something that Lingjian school had been exploring for many years. In the beginning, the elders usually arranged a large-scale illusion technique to make the students immerse themselves in the history class. However, in the Age of Chaos, even if they just copied the image of that time, it would still leave a serious psychological burden on the students. Especially the 5th elder, who was responsible for the teaching task 50 years ago. She mischievously increased the degree of simulation of the illusion technique to the point that it was enough to scare the students to the point of urinating. After that lesson, even the 3 black and white Shudon stage disciples crawled out of the classroom in terror, not to mention the other blue and white disciples. Since then, the 5th elder's teaching qualification was revoked, and the relevant teaching materials of the Age of Chaos were also greatly simplified. The illusion technique teaching was cancelled, and the teaching materials were also cut by more than 80%. When Huayun became the history teacher, she simply simplified it into the list of the dead, which was very well received. At the end of the lesson, Huayun tidied up the podium and said, "Well, in the next class, I will talk about the chapter of the recovery of all living things, which is also the hero of the Dawn era. I hope that everyone will continue to attend class on time. As for the homework for this class, I won't leave any, as long as you prepare well, it will be fine. Then, after class, see you next time." After Huayun finished the lesson, she floated away amidst the cheers and applause of the students. The morning class ended here, and the disciples in the classroom left in groups of 3 to 5. Most of the blue and white disciples had to return to the carefree peak, while the black and white disciples took advantage of the noon lunch to meditate, and some exchanged pointers with other disciples. As for Wang Lu, the red and white successor disciple, he didn't have much fun staying here. Thanks to his master, he had a long-term meal ticket in the Misty Peak, which allowed him to eat and drink unlimited times. However, a successor disciple eating in the Misty Peak for a long time was the only one in the Lingjian school, so it attracted a lot of attention. Every time he ate, he would be regarded as a mascot. Even though Wang Lu had a high degree of shame, he still felt some pressure. Not to mention that the Misty Peak's cafeteria was notorious. Many years ago, the head chef seemed to have a grudge against the disciples. All year round, he would cook the rarely seen immortal vegetables and spirit meat like dog shit. When asked the reason, he would shirk the nutritional value, which provoked the wrath of the people. What was even more shameful was that last year, the Misty Peak's peak master, Lu Xian, decided to spend a lot of effort to renovate the cafeteria and improve the food. Therefore, no one knew who instigated him to use reform as a means, innovation as the goal, and in line with the principle that foreign monks like to chant scriptures, he hired a famous gourmet from the Western continent as the head chef, claiming that he would provide a Western-style feast for the Misty Peak. That head chef was also very dedicated. On the first day he came to Lingjian school, he learned that the Spirit Sword sect leader lived in the Stellar Peak. Thus, he creatively cooked a dish called Look Up at the Starry Sky as a gift project. More than 10 dead fish heads, as if cursing the world, were stuck on a pancake, which was simply appalling. Seeing those dead fish heads, Lu Xian's complexion turned as pale as a pancake. However, since things had already come to this, he couldn't back down. Earlier, he had already signed the contract. Every year, he spent thousands of spirit stones to hire a Starry Sky head chef, which was naturally a loss of face. However, since he had signed the contract, he couldn't just go back on his word and ruin the sect's surplus. Therefore, he simply broke the pot and strictly followed the contract to promote that Starry Sky head chef to the Misty Peaks cafeteria head chef. Since the other party took charge of the Misty Peaks cafeteria, the situation of black and white disciples coming to the Carefree Peak to eat became more and more common, which actually promoted the internal communication within the sect. On the other hand, the long-term meal ticket of the Misty Peak has been depreciating again and again. Until one day, the fifth elder found out that the meal ticket was so cheap that even she, who had always been on credit, was somewhat tempted. Thus, she changed the location of Wang Lu's meal to the Misty Peak. I don't know if today's meal will be fried fish with French fries, or French fries with fried fish. Damn, please don't let it be meat and lamb tripe, I really can't eat it. In his heart, Wang Lu secretly prayed that today's dishes could be slightly more humane, but thinking of the consistent style of that Starry Sky head chef, he really couldn't be optimistic. Especially when he thought of the several abnormal brothers that came from the Carefree Peak some time ago. The heavier the taste, the more he couldn't let go of it. Look up at the Starry Sky head chef, meat and lamb tripe, kidney pudding. He ate it happily. While eating, he also cheered, which made that Starry Sky head chef so happy that he rolled on the floor and promised to continue to work hard, to offer more traditional Western continent delicacies to everyone. Damn, did the people of the Western continent eat shit for a living? While he was thinking, a small stone suddenly flew toward his head. Wang Lu reacted quickly and reached out to catch the stone. After being stunned for a moment, he couldn't help but laugh. He looked around and sure enough, he saw a familiar figure under a tree. That person was wearing a coarse long robe. Her clothes were simple, but it was difficult to hide her pretty figure and face. Her smiling face was cute and lively, with a bit of wild and unruly nature. Seeing that, Wang Lu immediately smiled, wiped his saliva, and quickly walked over. Braised pork, oh no, lady boss, I'm coming. Chapter 32. Unknowingly, Wang Lu had been in the Spirit Sword Mountain for 2 years. During this period of time, his life seemed ordinary, but the path of an immortal was different from that of a mortal. This so-called ordinary life was something that he had not experienced in the past 12 years. Too many new things poured into his mind, so much so that Wang Lu's memory, which he had always been proud of, could not hold too much of the past. His leisurely life in the Wang family village was only left with a few iconic symbols. Even the immortal gathering, which he relied on to become famous, had gradually faded. However, when he thought about the box of handicrafts that he bought 2 years ago in the Spirit Creek town for 3,500 taels of silver, it still remained in his mind, like a bouquet of brilliant flowers, just like the bright and beautiful smile of the girl in front of him, which would never fade. Hey, lady boss, good afternoon. Wang Lu casually greeted her, and his face was brimming with a very warm smile. Speaking of this lady boss, she was an extraordinary person in the mountain, and her identity was not trivial. Specifically, there were 3 points. First, entering and exiting the Spirit Sword Mountain was like entering and exiting her own backyard. Speaking of which, there were hundreds of townspeople in the Spirit Creek town, but so far, Wang Lu only met the lady boss who could pass through the mountain gate and enter the Spirit Sword Mountain. 2 years ago, the lady boss joked that she would meet Wang Lu again on the mountain, and now, they often met each other on the mountain, which was not a lie. Second, the lady boss was very popular on the mountain, and most of the disciples were familiar with her. Even the elders would smile when they saw her. The most incredible thing was that his own master, the 5th elder, even affectionately called her Little Ling, heir, and claimed that they had a deep sisterly relationship. However, when he asked about the lady boss's identity in detail, everyone was vague. The elders obviously knew the truth, but they did not say it. The disciples' answer perfectly highlighted the Lingjian school's upright and outspoken spirit. I see that the elders are very polite to her, so how could we, the younger generation, dare to act rashly? Third, and also the most crucial point, the firmament cloud ancient coin, which Wang Lu used to turn the tables in the Immortal Gathering 2 years ago, was personally given to him by the lady boss. After entering the mountain, Wang Lu was very clear about the value of the ancient coin. According to common sense, unless the lady boss was the illegitimate daughter of the sect leader, there was no other way to explain the origin of the ancient coin. But looking at it, there were 2 points that didn't make sense. First, the dignified daughter of the sect leader ran to the Spirit Creek town to run an inn. The son of an official was really too curious. Moreover, after knowing her for 2 years, Wang Lu could tell that the lady boss did not have the slightest bit of cultivation in the immortal Tao. She was completely an ordinary person, completely different from the sect master with the astral spiritual root. Secondly, her master, the 5th elder, addressed her as a sister. If the lady boss was the illegitimate daughter of the sect leader, wouldn't the 5th elder be lowering her seniority? Based on Wang Lu's understanding of his master, that was absolutely impossible. Thus, the lady boss became a peerless genius with an unfathomable origin. Fortunately, although her origin was strange, she was a good person. In his 2 years of dull immortal cultivation life, this lady boss from the Spirit Creek town was a rare wonderful embellishment. Every 3 to 5 days, she would go up the mountain alone, carrying a box full of farm food, to improve the food for Wang Lu, who had been tortured by the Starry Sky chef. Therefore, when he saw the lady boss, Wang Lu's sadness about his lunch disappeared. He quickly walked to the tree, looked at the food box in the girl's hand, and let out a lascivious smile. The girl sighed. Your smile can easily cause a scandal. Although she said that, she still invited Wang Lu to sit under the tree and opened the food box. Just like 2 years ago, it was just some ordinary farm food. In the Spirit Sword Mountain, a place full of immortal vegetables and spirit meat, any kind of unimaginable food could be tasted. Of course, it was in the cafeteria of the Carefree Peak, or in the private kitchen of some elders. However, at this time, Wang Lu really felt that the lady boss's farm food was invincible. Come on, no matter how much you praise me, I can't come up with any new tricks, let alone free your meal. Today, I came to find you because, without waiting for the other party to finish, Wang Lu has consciously fished out a few bunches of spirit grass from his pocket and handed them over. The lady boss revealed a smile. Okay, in 2 days, I'll come to you after I've exchanged the money. Speaking of which, you're really willing to do it. The middle-rank spirit grass on the non-phase peak has almost been squandered by you. Wang Lu snappily said, my scoundrel master has been with me for 2 years, but she didn't even give me a penny of pocket money. Even the sect's subsidy for the successor disciple has been deducted by me. So, I can only rely on myself, right? Moreover, if I don't waste these spirit grass, should I leave them for that idiot? The natural scenery of the non-phase peak has almost been wasted by her. In any case, when she dies, this non-phase peak will be in my pocket, so it's only natural that I get a little inheritance in advance. You and your master really have a deep master-disciple relationship. The lady boss, while gnawing on a pig's trotter, sincerely sighed with emotion. Wang Lu also said, fortunately, the lady boss is also in the business of selling stolen goods, otherwise, I wouldn't be able to sell so many treasures that I dug up on the Nanfei's peak. The lady boss chuckled. Nonsense, Lingjian School is, after all, one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. How could there be a circulation of gold and silver within the school? It's all spirit stones and sex points. Wang Lu said, the problem is, for a body refining stage rookie, even if you give me top-grade spirit stones, it's still useless. It's better to get some silver and go down the mountain to buy some mortal tools. The lady boss dropped the bone that she had chewed and casually asked, speaking of this, how is your recent practice? Wang Lu immediately asked, may I ask the lady boss, how is your recent business in the inn? The two of us are really in the same boat. The lady boss sighed. 2 years ago, I was still a business elite with a daily income, a daily income of 10 million taels of silver. Unexpectedly, my inn is now deserted, a plummet. Nonsense, 2 years ago, it was a rare gathering of idiots. You used 100 pots of boiled radishes to catch all the idiots in one fell swoop to earn 10 million a day. Are you planning to kill the goose that lays the golden eggs to catch the fish? Speaking of which, do you still keep in touch with your gay friend? Wang Lu really wanted to spit out the rice in his mouth on the lady boss's face. How could I have a gay friend? Don't casually smear other people's innocence. I and Little Hai are just pen pals. That grandson abandoned me and ran to the 10,000 arts sect to become a genius cultivator. A year ago, he was able to draw spiritual energy into his body. Yesterday, he just wrote a letter saying that he has broken through to the 7th level cultivation stage. His flaunting face is exceptionally hateful. The lady boss nodded in agreement. Reaching the 7th level chi cultivating stage in 2 years, the 10,000 arts sect is really a family of spirit root hunters, specializing in all kinds of difficult and miscellaneous spirit root. The potential of Hai Yunfan's soft wind and weak water spirit root has been excavated to the limit. In contrast, our several inner court disciples are far behind. Even Zhu Qin, who has the fastest progress, has just drawn spiritual energy into his body, yet he also has a 3rd-rank spirit root. Sure enough, it's the system problem. Lingjian School is indeed worthy to be the disgrace of the 5 uniques. It highly reflects the current situation of the sect leaders fatuous and incompetent, and his private life is rotten. Wang Lu was amazed by the lady boss. Your tone of saying that it's all the system problem seems familiar. The lady boss pursed her lips. However, in any case, compared to your void spirit root that can only run for 2 years, they can still be considered to have worked hard. Damn, I, your father, am a top student, please show some respect. However, even Wang Lu himself said this in a weak tone. In the immortal cultivation sect, no matter how much emphasis was placed on quality education, the foundation was still the immortal cultivation. However, the progress of Wang Lu's immortal cultivation was simply appalling. Now, let's talk about it in detail. According to Wang Lu's initial expectation, as a successor disciple of one of the 5 great sects, it was reasonable to say that every meal should have heavenly treasures. After the meal, a senior elder would open up his meridians and transfer his power to him. Then, he would flip through the top secret books and cultivate the 1st rank or even the transcendent rank ancient immortal method. After that, he would spend 3 years in chi cultivating stage, 3 years in foundation establishment, and 3 years in Shudan. After 10 years, he would become the Taoist master of King Pill. However, in fact, that was just a daydream. First of all, the first step was completely wrong. In the first 2 years of Lingjian School, there was nothing but basic skill. As a well-known ancient sect in the immortal cultivation world, Lingjian School's basic skill requirement for its disciples was extremely strict. In general, the cultivators of the immortal cultivation sect would directly start from the chi cultivating stage, drawing the spiritual energy into the body, circulating it through the meridians, until the chi cultivating stage was completed, and then they would try to build the foundation establishment. However, in Lingjian school, there was an additional body refining stage before the qi cultivating stage. As the name suggested, it was to temper the body. The new cultivators had to refine their body to the level of a Xiantian master before they could start to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and officially cultivate. The reason was also very simple: to lay a solid foundation. This step was not considered rare among the ancient sections. For example, Kunlun Celestial Mountain and some sects with deep foundations all did this. In any case, it did not take long. In the mortal world, even the top martial arts sects needed 10 years to train a disciple with first-class aptitude to become a Xiantian master. However, the immortal cultivation sects were naturally much faster. The 5 uniques of the Wanxian League were even faster. The black and white disciples of the Misty Peak could usually complete it in 2 to 3 years. As the successor disciple of Lingjian school, Wang Lu's cultivation speed should be faster than the black and white disciples. However, after 2 years, other than his super strong endurance, Wang Lu did not seem to have changed much. He could not use his fists and feet to crack stones, nor could he walk on snow without leaving a trace, or cross a river on a reed. This was also nonsense. Whose martial arts hero was a long-distance runner? At least, he had to do 100 push-ups and sit-ups, and after 3 years, he could become a one-punch Superman, right? However, this was the nonsense part. The other black, white, blue, and white disciples could at least receive the teaching from the senior disciples of the sect. Occasionally, the elders would come to teach them a public lesson. What subduing demon Arhat fist, 8 desolation 6 directions method. The martial arts that the mortal world yearned for were as common as potatoes and cabbages in the Spirit Sword Mountain. However, Wang Lu could not do it. As a successor disciple, in addition to the cultural class, the rest of the cultivation was completely taken care of by his master, the 5th elder. And it was impossible for the 5th elder to diligently teach and actively educate people. In the past 2 years, Wang Lu had witnessed with his own eyes that the black and white disciples of the same age had gradually evolved from the youth A, B and C to the youth Fang Shiyu. Some time ago, the one with the fastest progress, Zhu Qin, had even mastered the 88 subduing dragon palms, and his fighting strength was even better than the average Xiantian master. As for Wang Lu himself, his best achievement was relying on his unparalleled endurance and mountainous running ability to paralyze a wild monkey on the non-phase peak. Whether this gap was because his master, the 5th elder, was too stupid, or because his master, the 5th elder, was too stupid, in short, the current situation was that, among the disciples who entered the Spirit Sword Mountain in the year 6343 of the 9 regions calendar, Wang Lu had become the most exotic existence. His status was the highest, but his cultivation was the lowest. Moreover, he was a top student. Under the influence of envy, jealousy, hatred, and many other reasons, it was inevitable that he would bump into each other. The small group headed by Zhu Qin ridiculed Wang Lu as a waste of immortal cultivation, while Wang Lu unceremoniously criticized them for their lack of brain capacity, saying that in the future, they were only fit to be human cauldrons or slaves. In short, they were just shooting their mouths at each other. Of course, when it came to shooting their mouths at each other, Wang Lu's record was far ahead, but he really didn't think it was fun. By the way, did Zhu Qin come looking for trouble with you recently? Last time, he was showered with dog blood by me. Before the shadow in his heart disappears, he shouldn't come looking for abuse, right? Wang Lu held his chopsticks and looked up at the sky, recalling the spectacular scene not long ago, when he spat out a lotus flower with his tongue, causing Zhu Qin and his numerous henchmen to vomit blood and faint. The lady boss put down her bowl and said, "It's really funny. They clearly know that the result of provoking an inner court disciple is to be badly beaten, so why bother? Just based on the difference in the color of the robe, no matter how fast their cultivation progress is, it's meaningless. In case they provoke you and report it to the disciplinary elder, they will suffer a big loss." Wang Lu shook his head and said, "It's not a deep hatred, it's just that they can't stand each other and shoot their mouths at each other. However, every time we win by shooting our mouths, it will make us look incompetent, not to mention snitching. Our reputation will be ruined in the long run, and if we get trampled on in the future, we can only blame it on our bad luck. After all, the immortal path still depends on one's cultivation. No matter how good we are at cursing, we can't withstand being struck by lightning. The lady boss was slightly surprised and said, "You're quite understanding. I thought you felt invincible after obtaining the identity of a true disciple." That also depends on whose true disciple it is, right? If it's the sect leader's true disciple, then it's fine, but with such a master, to be honest, I'm very worried that I'll be implicated by her in the future. To be honest, right now I feel that martial Uncle Lu Xian's attitude towards me has been somewhat discounted. The lady boss nodded and said, Lu Xian and Feng He hate your master the most. It's inevitable that they hate the house and its crow. Damn, aren't those two the two elders with the most real power in the sect, apart from the sect leader? My beloved master, you're really too awesome to be able to blacken those two for a lifetime. After exclaiming in admiration, Wang Lu clicked his tongue and said, "These days, it's really not easy." When the lady boss heard this, she was also somewhat worried about Wang Lu's future. When they first met 2 years ago, the young man was in high spirits, and she, who was used to seeing the so-called young talents of the immortal cultivation world, was also attracted to him. However, after 2 years, Wang Lu's fate was really bleak. "AI, how about this, you learn martial arts with me?" "Learn martial arts?" Wang Lu also put down his bowl and frowned. "What do you mean?" The lady boss patiently explained, "In any case, you're currently in the body refining stage and haven't officially stepped into the immortal cultivation world. If you learn martial arts from the mortal world with me, not only will it strengthen your physique, but it will also speed up your cultivation in the body refining stage, and it will also give you a few more life-saving skills. In the future, when Zhu Qin and his gang come looking for trouble, you will be able to fight back fair and square. Don't look at Zhu Qin's chi gathering stage. If he meets a truly brilliant martial arts master, beating him is like stepping on an ant." With regards to the lady boss's bold words, Wang Lu did not doubt her words at all. In the past, this young girl disguised herself in black and fought with her bare fists. Her peerless heroism was still unforgettable to Wang Lu. After knowing each other for 2 years, although they had tacitly avoided some sensitive topics, there was no doubt that the lady boss had unique skills. However, Wang Lu was slightly hesitant. Will it interfere with other aspects of cultivation? The lady boss patted her chest and guaranteed, "Don't worry, there will be no problem. The martial arts I teach you absolutely do not have any side effects. You can rest assured and boldly practice it. When you become a peerless master, you can step on Zhu Qin. If you can really step on him, it will be Non-Phase Peak's victory over Misty Peak. It can also be considered as making your master proud." Damn, I practice peerless martial arts just to step on dog shit to make my master proud? But, in any case, I have nothing to do. Lady boss, "Oh no, master, please accept this disciple's worship," Wang Lu said. With a serious expression, he inserted a pair of chopsticks into his bowl and kowtowed. "Damn. Don't burn incense for me." Chapter 33. The lady boss was a trustworthy person. Wang Lu had experienced this firsthand 2 years ago. 2 years later, the lady boss was still the same lady boss. She always kept her word. After the two had lunch under the tree, the lady boss cleared away the bowls and chopsticks. She picked up the lunchbox. "All right, shall we start?" "Start what?" "Of course it's martial arts." It was better to hurry than to be late. Now was the best time to digest the food. "Follow me." As the lady boss spoke, she turned around and started walking up a rugged path. No one knew where she was going. Wang Lu didn't ask any questions and followed closely behind. The two of them walked on the mountain path of Misty Peak at lightning speed. Although the lady boss was carrying a heavy lunchbox with fragile cutlery in it, she walked as if she was walking on flat ground. The lunchbox didn't even shake. Not even the sound of the cutlery clanking could be heard. She had to use both her hands and feet to barely keep up with the lady boss's speed. As for Wang Lu, he was far behind. Although he had been running for 2 years and had superhuman endurance, he was, after all, not a martial artist. Thus, his climbing action was not natural and unrestrained. He had to use both his hands and feet to barely keep up with the lady boss's speed. After walking for an hour, the lady boss finally came to a stop when the rugged, grotesquely shaped rocks around her had transformed into a peach blossom forest. There was no one around. Not bad. You can really keep up. You're not even out of breath. Even a monkey can't climb as well as you. Wang Lu patted the mud off his hands. Hey, I'm from the mountains. Running before a monkey is my specialty. Your special skill is too tasteless, isn't it? But it also proves that you didn't waste the 2 years. You've built a solid foundation. Since that's the case, the rest will be easier. I'll teach you a peerless technique. You can practice it in peace. The only problem is that it might be a little hard. Wang Lu smiled. It doesn't matter if it's hard. I'm serving the people. But I'm already this old. Isn't it a little too late to start learning martial arts? In the end, the lady boss patted her chest confidently. You're comparing me to a mediocre teacher. Not to mention that you're only 14, even if you were 40, it wouldn't be too late to start learning from me. Why do your words sound so familiar? Wang Lu and the lady boss were chatting happily. However, when the lady boss actually demonstrated that the divine art of subduing the dragon, that she claimed to be the best in the outer sect, Wang Lu immediately knelt down. The divine art of subduing the dragon was not complicated. There were only 16 forms in the entire set, and there were no more than 30 movements when separated. However, the difficulty of the movements was enough to make one's hair stand on end. The person who created this technique must have harbored a great hatred for humans. Every move was designed to go against the common sense of the human body. If the joints were not bent outwards, then the ligaments would be torn apart to stretch the limbs. Halfway through, Wang Lu felt that the divine art of subduing the dragon, in this technique probably meant that even if a dragon practiced this technique, it would surrender halfway through. Of course, although this cultivation method was anti-human, there was no shortage of peerless experts in the world who could practice this anti-human kung fu. The lady boss did not even blush, nor did her heart skip a beat, which made Wang Lu highly suspect that this energetic girl ate some strange fruit when she was a child. Since then, her limbs could be assembled and stretched at will. Okay, that's all 16 forms of the divine art of subduing the dragon. How do you feel? After finishing the set of inhuman techniques, the lady boss asked with a smile, how much can you remember? Reporting to master, I've forgotten half of them. Can I finish my apprenticeship after I forget all of them? Please give me 2 more minutes. Damn. Are you kidding me? Because I really don't want to add such inhuman memories to myself. Master, is there a more reliable technique? The lady boss was instantly enraged. She was like a great artist whose artistic attainments were completely denied. What do you know, you little brat? Do you know how many people in the mortal world dream of learning even half a form of this divine art of subduing the dragon? Practice obediently for me. If you don't practice it well, you're not allowed to eat. Damn, using food to threaten me. How despicable. Wang Lu, with a very strong backbone and straightforwardness, began to earnestly cultivate. Although his heart was filled with disgust, when Wang Lu actually started to practice, his progress was unexpectedly fast. The lady boss had only demonstrated it once, but every move was deeply engraved in his mind. Of course, this could also be explained by the fact that those anti-human movements were too impactful. When Wang Lu easily completed the first 3 moves without much hindrance, even the lady boss couldn't help but be surprised. Not bad, you're so flexible. Wang Lu said weakly, thank you for the compliment. Heh, since you can easily complete the first few moves, let's speed it up a bit. Next, try to add a requirement for breathing. Come, listen to my chant and breathe. This time, the difficulty was much higher. Although it was not difficult for Wang Lu to perform the shameful moves of the divine art of subduing the dragon with his body, when the lady boss used a special rhythm to guide the breathing, Wang Lu immediately felt a mountain of pressure. The lady boss rhythm was irregular. Sometimes it was fast, sometimes it was slow. When it was fast, it was like a hailstorm. It was overwhelming. When it was slow, it was dense and long, almost suffocating. Rather than calling it breathing training, it was more like a prank game. But not long after, Wang Lu felt that there seemed to be a special flow of air in his body. Under the guidance of the lady boss chant, it methodically flowed through every part of his body. And as the air flowed, the muscles all over his body began to tremble slightly, stretching and contracting. Although the range was not large, the movement of all the muscles in his body consumed a lot of energy. Wang Lu only persisted for a short while before he was drenched in sweat and his heart was beating wildly. Seeing him sweating like rain, the lady boss clicked her tongue in wonder. Oh? There's a reaction so quickly? Your sense of qi is really sharp. If you were in the mortal world, you would be a rare martial arts genius that only appears once in 100 years. Wang Lu endured the discomfort of his breathing. Damn, I have the void spiritual root, a rare genius that only appears once in 10,000 years in the cultivation world. TSK, a rare specimen material that only appears once in 10,000 years. The lady boss curled her lips. Alright, let's call it a day. To be able to make a mountain person like you run like a dead monkey like a dead dog, the effect of the training is quite sufficient. Go back and rest well. When you've recovered, take some time to practice. After you finish practicing this divine art of subduing the dragon, I'll teach you a few more moves. With your talent and my brilliance, in less than a month, you'll at least be able to defeat Zhu Qin's henchmen. Damn! A month of hard work and I can only defeat a minion? In the past 2 years, how much have I been left behind by others? My beloved master, shouldn't you consider compensating me for the loss of my youth? That night, dragging his exhausted body, Wang Lu returned to Nanfei's peak and fell asleep. Early the next morning, his whole body was aching, and he wanted to die. However, remembering that he hadn't eaten breakfast yet, Wang Lu struggled to get up, staggered to the living room, and firmly swept away the steamed buns, pickled vegetables, porridge, and sliced ham on the table. After eating and washing the dishes, Wang Lu pushed open his master's door. Sure enough, the smell of alcohol filled the air. As always, his master was sleeping like a dead dog. Her white clothes were spotless, but under her sleeping posture, he really couldn't bear to look straight at her. Objectively speaking, this fifth elder could be regarded as a rare beauty. Of course, if her temperament and other factors were taken into account, she would immediately become a repulsive monster. His master was a beauty. In the immortal cultivation world, this was the long-cherished wish of many young cultivators. Unfortunately, after 2 years, Wang Lu was already tired of looking at her. Seeing that she was still alive, he was too lazy to pay attention to this best quality master. It just so happened that the Ten Cloud Hall didn't have any class arrangement today, so he just practiced in Nanfei's peak with peace of mind. According to the lady boss, the more tired he was, the more he had to persist in practicing the divine art of subduing the dragon, so the effect could be doubled. As for the training ground, it was not too demanding, it was just an open space outside the house. Hoping that the dead dog inside the house would be like the other peak masters, who would provide the successor disciple with a professional training ground, or even a blessed place, he. Outside the house, he slightly moved his muscles and bones. Enduring the pain of his limbs being torn apart, Wang Lu began to practice the divine art of subduing the dragon, according to the instructions of the lady boss yesterday. Although he didn't have the lady boss's chant and couldn't coordinate with his breathing rhythm, this set of movements in itself was already an excellent method to strengthen the body. After practicing it once, Wang Lu felt that the soreness all over his body had lessened a bit. He couldn't help but praise the miraculous effect of this mortal world's martial arts. Having the lady boss as his master was not a loss. Especially compared to the dead dog inside the house, she was simply a touching and spicy teacher. While thinking, Wang Lu began to practice the divine art of subduing the dragon, from the beginning again. In any case, he had nothing to do. However, this time, when he was halfway through, he heard a woman's lazy moan, "Ah, my head hurts. Are you hungover? You big idiot. So poor that you even embezzled the sex subsidy for your disciple, yet you still run to buy several hundred spirit stones for a bottle of immortal fine jade wine every day. You deserve to die of pain. It's best if you don't wake up from your drunken stupor." However, the fifth elder was, after all, the fifth elder. With a turn of her immortal cultivation method, her drunkenness disappeared, and her face glowed with glory. I slept very well, and I got drunk very well. Haha. I'll drink again in 2 days. As she spoke, the woman took large strides out of the door. When she saw Wang Lu, who was practicing the divine art of subduing the dragon, she was stunned. Little Wang Lu, what are you doing?" Wang Lu replied snappily, "Damn, I can't see, I'm practicing." Practicing? The fifth elder was instantly puzzled. What kind of practice? Have I ever taught you martial arts? Damn, you still have the nerve to say that? You haven't taught me martial arts for 2 years. You're either running or bathing every day. Are you taking in a disciple or raising a pig? The fifth elder circled around Wang Lu with interest, carefully observing his posture. She couldn't help but be even more puzzled. Why do I feel that you're practicing martial arts in the mortal world? Thus, Wang Lu simply stopped practicing, straightened up and said, "It's martial arts in the mortal world. I met an expert at the foot of the mountain. Seeing that I could only run to death after practicing for 2 years in Lingjian school, out of sympathy, he taught me a set of peerless godly martial arts." The fifth elder was stunned for a while, then stomped her feet in anger. *T expert. Teaching martial arts in the mortal world to a true disciple of an immortal cultivation sect? How stupid do you have to be to do such a thing? Little Wang Lu, you're also stupid. You didn't ask for guidance from a famous teacher like me, but found a swindler to learn martial arts in the mortal world? You really ate too much starry sky, water got into your brain. Wang Lu was also anxious. You also know what the Misty Peaks cafeteria looks like. Then why did you even give me a long-term meal ticket? And no matter how much of a swindler he is, the martial arts he taught me are real. Wasting 2 years here is actually not as good as practicing martial arts with a master for 1 night, and you still have the nerve to say that. The fifth elder was inexplicably shocked. You traitorous disciple, you actually compare me to a swindler? You think you're worthy to be compared to him? As a result, halfway through Wang Lu's ridicule, he was interrupted by his master, who was so angry that he almost vomited blood. You idiot, you really have eyes but can't see. Do you really think that I, as your master, have been slacking off for the past 2 years and didn't care about your matters? Wang Lu sneered. Then, master, please make a big heart demon oath that for the past 2 years, you have done your best to train your disciple, and if there is any falsehood, then from now on, you will abstain from alcohol and sex, and follow the disciplinary elder Fang He's lifestyle. The fifth elder's beautiful face paled. Abstain from alcohol and sex. Who taught you such a vicious oath? Master, are you feeling guilty? Damn, even if your kidney is weak, your heart is not weak. I just accidentally forgot how to make a big heart demon oath. Damn, you can even think of this reason. Please don't be so shameless. The fifth elder was forced into a corner by her beloved disciple, and she was so angry that her face turned red. You talk so much, isn't it because you don't believe in my level? That's simple, just find that bastard master of yours and have a match with me. Wang Lu was shocked. Master, your lower limit has reached a new low. You are a dignified king pill cultivator, and you want to compete with a mortal world's martial artist? The fifth elder angrily said, of course I want to suppress my cultivation to the level of a mortal. It's a fair match, the winner is the king. In your dreams, when the time comes, you will deliberately lose the match, and then take the opportunity to kick me, this disciple with the void spirit root, and from then on, you will be free and happy. Before she finished her words, she was interrupted by the fifth elder. At this time, in her anger, she dared to bet anything. If I lose, you can do whatever you want to me. I will be your disciple without any complaints. Deal. After being hit by Wang Lu while the iron was hot, the fifth elder calmed down a bit. After some reflection, it seemed like she was played by her beloved disciple. However, in the end, she was just a kid who hasn't seen much of the world, so how could this little trick be put on the table? She actually practiced a mortal world's martial art. She didn't know that she was receiving the greatest education of the Spirit Sword Mountain. After this matter, this idiot disciple must be carefully trained. Chapter 34. In short, that's what happened. At the Ru family inn, Wang Lu snorted as he sucked the steaming hot stewed noodles while earnestly explaining to the lady boss. The lady boss chewed the garlic while squinting at Wang Lu. And then? Did you agree? Wang Lu nodded. I've already said that, so of course I have to agree. Since she agreed, I'd be a bastard if I didn't take advantage of the situation. The lady boss angrily slammed the table, causing the noodle soup to splatter. What advantage? Do you really think she's an idiot? No matter how unreliable that fellow is, she's still a king pill cultivator, and a peak king pill cultivator at that. You're just a mortal who hasn't even reached the halfway point of the body refining stage, yet you still have the nerve to dream of becoming a king pill cultivator? Forget it. You'd better go and masturbate yourself. Wang Lu had already picked up the noodle bowl and dodged the lady boss's thunderous palm strike. He said, in any case, I'm not the one who's going to fight, so what am I afraid of? Nonsense, you bet with her, the one who's going to fight is me. I'm just the lady boss of the inn, not the head of the Lingjian school. You want me to fight with a king pill cultivator? What have I done to you in the past 2 years? Wang Lu calmly said, it's like this. My master said that she will suppress her strength to the level of a mortal. The lady boss waved her hand. She's just pretending. Even if a king pill cultivator doesn't use the surrounding spiritual energy and their own magical power, their jade mansion and immortal heart are enough to defeat any mortal martial artist. You idiot, you've been with her for 2 years, yet you still don't know her? When did she ever bet on a bet that she won't win? If she's really a god of gamblers, would she still need to deduct her disciples' allowance? I often hear her crying in her sleep about my money, why didn't I bet big, and so on. Wang Lu shook his head in a very pessimistic manner. What's more, lady boss, you're not an ordinary martial artist in the mortal world. Back then, you were shouting, fight! 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 While dismantling Dharma treasures with your bare hands. It's still fresh in my memory. At the mention of this topic, the lady boss became silent. It was obvious that she wasn't very happy about it. Inwardly, Wang Lu also understood. Although the lady boss was quite heroic, she was, after all, a woman. Moreover, she was a beautiful woman, provided that she tidied herself up a bit. In the past, when she turned into a mysterious shadow and screamed, it was obviously a dark history. However, at this critical juncture, it didn't matter if you had a black or white history. However, seeing that the lady boss was in such a bad mood, I'll just have to do some psychological work. I'll comfort her, reason with her, and move her emotionally. It's like this. In the beginning, I didn't want to have a bad relationship with my master, but she said that the martial arts of the mortal world are bullshit in front of the immortal Tao. I don't care if you're a Xiantian martial master, a martial saint, or a martial emperor. Any qi refining stage cultivator can be beaten into a meat man. She also said that the person who taught me martial arts must have maggots in his head. Otherwise, he'll be a deceitful and wasteful person. she'll probably be a flat-chested, boorish, uncultured, and uneducated barbarian. In the future, not only will she not be able to find a husband, she won't even have a girlfriend. Her only friends in this life are Little Finger and Little Cucumber. After 30 years old, she'll probably raise a few large dogs to improve her life. Oh, he. Shut up. The lady boss glared angrily and smashed the dining table into pieces with her palm. That's right, it was smashed into pieces. A thick mahogany dining table was smashed into wood shavings all over the floor. Not even the bones were left. That bastard, how dare she say that to me? Crash. The lady boss was so angry that she couldn't control the strength in her hand even though she was a top-notch martial artist. She crushed the bowl of noodles in her hand. Wang Lu, take me up the mountain. If I don't beat the sh*t out of her, my inn will close down today. I'll become a monk tomorrow. Wang Lu slowly nodded. Very well. Then, he suddenly realized that his way of appeasing her was a bit wrong. Alas, no matter what, the result is the same. The righteous warrior lady boss angrily beat up the disgrace of Spirit Sword Sect's fifth elder. This script was simply too good. It would be unreasonable if she didn't reward him. The lady boss was a decisive person. Once she made up her mind, she immediately went up the mountain with boiling killing intent and Wang Lu, who was watching the fun. The disciples on duty at the two sides of the mountain gate would usually smile and greet the lady boss, but now that they saw this young girl with eyes that were as red as blood, like a demon from the netherworld, when they were glared at by her, the two blue and white disciples immediately kept quiet out of fear, pretending that they didn't see anything. Not long after, the lady boss and Wang Lu had arrived at Nanfei's peak. The lady boss heroically shouted, "Wang Wu, get out here." Then he heard an echoing roar, "Who's the wild dog that disturbs people's sleep in the afternoon? If you don't cultivate your virtue, be careful of being struck by the heavenly tribulation lightning." Wang Lu was inexplicably surprised. What the f***ck, this idiot is really capable. With her character, she still has the nerve to mention the heavenly tribulation? Moreover, she slept until this afternoon, she's going to hibernate. The lady boss gritted her teeth. Today, I'll let her sleep forever. Then, with a murderous look, she kicked open the door. Wang Lu followed closely behind and saw his master who was half-dressed inside. His master was also shocked. What the f***ck? Are you playing a rogue? Not only did you challenge the sect, you can't even give me a few minutes to dress. The lady boss was silent, stopped at the door for a moment, and then silently closed the door. Wang Lu also had nothing to say, so he consciously whistled outside the room without saying a word. After a while, his master finally finished dressing and pushed the door open, but her face was full of surprise. "Little Ling, how come it's you? I thought I was seeing things." Little Ling crossed her arms and raised her head. "Do you still need others to remind you of the good things you've done?" As a result, his master slapped her head. "What the f***ck, don't say this. I'm most afraid of people asking me this question. It makes people have 1,000 things to think about, but I don't know where to start. What the f***ck, master, how many good things have you done?" But after a while, his master came to her senses. She pointed at Wang Lu and said in disbelief, "Little Ling, could it be that the master who taught this idiot kung fu is you?" Little Ling, sneered. "Yes, it's that flat-chested, rude, uncultured, uneducated barbarian tomboy. In the future, not only will she not be able to find a husband, she won't even have a girlfriend. Her only friends in this life are Little Finger and Little Cucumber. After 30 years old, she will probably raise several large dogs to improve her life." His master was suddenly shocked, and cold sweat almost dripped down her forehead. "Little Ling, what the hell are you doing? Could it be that the pain during your menstrual period has damaged your brain?" "You." Little Ling, didn't say much. "Don't you have a bet with Wang Lu?" I'm here to help him finish the bet. Cut the crap, let's fight. Fight? Fight my ass. We have a deep sisterly love. If there's any problem, we can talk it out. Why do we have to fight each other? Speaking of the deep sisterly love, the lady boss seemed to hesitate and didn't say anything. Wang Lu immediately struck while the iron was hot. Master, you're quite smart. You know you have no chance of winning, so you use the deep sisterly love as a shield. No wonder you're the shame of spiritual sword sect. His master immediately became anxious. No chance of winning, my ass. If I want to win, it's just a matter of minutes. So, the lady boss didn't hesitate anymore. Okay, then I'll give you a minute to defeat me. Damn, good sister, don't push me like this. It doesn't matter. Anyway, you can defeat me in a minute. Thus, this elder in white was in a terrible predicament. But it only lasted for a moment. Fifth elder was indeed the fifth elder. She was also a decisive person who didn't care about the consequences. Okay, then let's fight. As the saying goes, beating and scolding is love. Little Ling heir, our favorability has been stagnant for a long time. After this fight, we can probably get married. Damn, what an amazing twist, master. I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. I completely underestimated your lower limit. As for the lady boss herself, she turned a deaf ear to the elder's muttering. She silently rolled up her sleeves and took a stance. Seeing that this fight was inevitable, Wang Lu could be considered to have completed his mission. He praised himself in his heart, "You're really too handsome." Then, he quietly found a safe corner to sit down and watch the show. His master obediently accepted her fate. She raised her emerald green bamboo sword and pointed it at the opponent, preparing to fight. At this time, her spiritual energy was completely restrained, and her magical power was sealed. Indeed, her cultivation base was only that of a mortal world. However, with just a simple starting stance, Wang Lu, who was watching from afar, felt a threatening aura assaulting him. Although he was sitting cross-legged, Wang Lu felt that all the muscles in his body were numb and not listening to his commands. Was this the domineering aura of a cultivator with the king pill? 2F** King Awesome. In any case, Wang Lu had practiced the divine skill of subduing the dragon for 2 days. With his rare martial arts talent, he should be considered a second-rate master in the mortal world, right? As a result, the aftermath of his master's stance made him unable to stand up. No wonder the lady boss said that a cultivator with the king pill could instantly kill all living beings in the mortal world by relying on their jade mansion and immortal heart. This gap was indeed too big. With a shake of the king's tyrannical aura, the natives in the mortal world could only bow their heads in worship. However, this was not important, because his master's opponent was the lady boss of the Ru family inn, who could also instantly kill all living beings in the mortal world. Wang Lu didn't quite understand how high the lady boss's martial arts cultivation base was. In short, it was definitely 10,000 times higher than a Xiantian master. Even if the legendary martial saint or martial emperor came, he reckoned that they still wouldn't be able to withstand her fists that could break magical weapons. In the face of the king pill cultivator's emerald green bamboo sword, the lady boss was unmoved. Lady boss, my master's **** transformation strategy is all thanks to you. The two women with deep sisterly love confronted each other for an unknown amount of time. Finally, the master, who had just woken up and hadn't had time to eat lunch, couldn't hold back her anger. With a shake of her bamboo sword, thousands of sword lights were like rain or fog, making it hard for people to see clearly, but hidden within them was a murderous intent. Wang Lu's eyes lit up. What a brilliant swordsmanship. In the past 2 years, although his cultivation base didn't make much progress, his eyesight was honed by the performance of a group of talented disciples in the sect. Lingjian School was famous for its swordsmanship, and its swordsmanship could be said to be the foundation of the sect. No one didn't know it, and no one didn't know it. However, With only a mortal world's cultivation base, being able to display this kind of murderous sword power with hidden needles in silk floss was rare in the Lingjian school. TSK, it seemed that although she was stupid and annoying, as the fifth elder, she still had some real ability. In the face of the King Pill cultivator's preemptive strike, the lady boss's reaction was simple and direct, and even seemed rude. It was a straight punch. There were no fancy moves or techniques. The only thing special about it was its speed. Accurate. Ruthless. Then, it was time to witness a miracle. On one side, it was a top-notch swordsmanship in the mortal world, coupled with an emerald bamboo sword that was obviously a magic weapon. On the other side, it was the lady boss's soft and tender fist. Wang Lu opened his eyes wide and focused all his energy, trying to see every detail clearly, but in a blur, the result was already out. The emerald green sword light shattered into countless stars, flashing and disappearing. A certain elder in white was much better. Like a meteor, he flew out horizontally and crashed into the mountain rocks with a loud bang, without a sound. As for the lady boss, she snorted coldly and shook her wrist. She glanced at the jagged gravel with the corner of her eyes, almost disdainful. So King domineering. Wang Lu was completely dumbfounded. The dignified King Pill cultivator, his respected master who obviously had some real skills, was actually punched into a meteor by this lady boss like a sandbag. Lady boss, I really misjudged you. I always thought you were a hidden character in the Spirit Creek town, but in the end, being a hidden character is simply an insult to you. You are King GM, a god of creation, my dear. After a long time, his respected master finally crawled up from the rubble. She didn't look as embarrassed as she expected. Although her body was inevitably stained with some dust, her face wasn't red, and she wasn't out of breath. She also didn't seem to have suffered any serious injuries. She just helplessly put her hands on her waist and sighed. Damn, I really can't withstand your ordinary attacks without using immortal magic power. Little Ling Air, you are indeed a heaven-defying person. The lady boss still kept a straight face and didn't say a word. His master looked around and happened to see the broken emerald bamboo sword on the ground. She sadly shook her head. What a pity for my precious sword. Then, she casually broke a green bamboo from the bamboo forest next to the rubble. She held it in her hand and lightly swung it. A burst of green light flashed, and a moment later, an identical emerald bamboo sword was formed. Wang Lu cursed in his heart. He thought that the emerald bamboo sword that never left her hand would at least be a magic weapon, but in the end, he really overestimated this poor bitch. The emerald bamboo sword was nothing more than a toy she casually made. Thinking about it, with this poor bitch's conduct, if she really had a magic weapon, she would have already sold it to drink wine. But in any case, I lost this time. Little Ling Air, I'm at your disposal. After saying that, the fifth elder assumed a posture of a martyr, as hypocritical as one could imagine. The lady boss couldn't keep her expression any longer and sighed. You are really... I don't know what to say. Why did you have to do this? The fifth elder was a bit puzzled. That's right, why did I have to do this? I knew I couldn't beat you, but I still had to fight. Oh, right, is it for the favorability? Little Ling Air, do you feel like you've fallen in love with me? Little Ling Air coldly said, I feel like that punch just now was too light. In addition, according to the bet, the one who can deal with you is not me, but your precious disciple. Speaking of his disciple, the fifth elder finally came back to his senses. This matter, from the beginning to the end, was obviously caused by him. Really, really worthy of being his disciple. No wonder that old fogey sect leaders said that the two of them were indeed destined to be master and disciple. This kind of evil disciple, it was really retribution. I only hate that I drank too much in the past few days. For a long time, my head was dizzy, and in the end, I fell for that brat's evil trick. Otherwise, even if I used my aunt's brain to think, I wouldn't have fallen for his provocation. What should I do now? Damn it, I don't want it. He was only 14 years old, and his growth and development were not yet complete. He definitely didn't have the capital, and he didn't have the skills. It wasn't satisfying at all. Although I have never done it with anyone, I can already predict the future with my imagination. Master, actually, you don't have to be afraid. I'm not interested in you. Hearing Wang Lu's words, his master immediately felt relieved. That's good, that's good. You don't have to worry about this kind of thing, take your time. And I also feel that some things don't need to be rushed, but some things can't be rushed. Master, I won't ask for anything else, just one thing. Please be a bit more serious and teach me some real skills. Speaking of this, his master had no choice but to respond seriously. You really don't understand my painstaking efforts. Do you really think that I took in a disciple as a pet to play with? Let's not talk about other things. That idiot sect leader made an agreement with me. As long as he can teach you to become a talent, money and beauties will be abundant. Before he could finish, the lady boss coldly interrupted him. Where did that old bachelor get beauties? Thus, his master immediately fell into deep thought. Wang Lu had no choice but to change the topic. Let's continue the original education topic. Master, please tell me in detail, how did you painstakingly teach me? His master raised his head. First, help me think about where did that idiot get beauties? Forget it. Chapter 35. Under Wang Lu's coercion, his master reluctantly avoided the topic of beautiful women and began to earnestly expound her teaching philosophy. Do you really need me to explain this kind of thing to you? You really hurt my heart. Let's not talk about other things. Do you know how much money I've spent on this medicinal bath for 2 years? Wang Lu chuckled. Certainly not as much as your wine money. His master suddenly stopped talking. Obviously, she was choked. After a while, she said, but the effect of the medicinal bath is unquestionable. Little Ling, you can also see this. As a bystander, the lady boss sighed and said, that's right. You've turned a commoner into a rare martial arts prodigy. You've really put in a lot of effort into this matter. It's rare. Wang Lu didn't quite understand. Please explain in detail. The lady boss then said, when I met you 2 years ago, I could tell that although you might have a very good talent for cultivation, when it comes to martial arts potential, you are only at the level of an ordinary farmer. Although there's nothing to say about your perception, your natural constitution is really lacking. Wang Lu's worldview was completely destroyed. What the hell? These two kinds of talent can be counted separately. His master sneered. Isn't that nonsense? You've been on the mountain for 2 years, don't you know this common sense? A martial artist cultivates the body, a cultivator cultivates the immortal cultivation path. How could they be confused? As the top student of the Spirit Sword Mountain, Wang Lu certainly knew this kind of common sense. However, he didn't think that with his dignified void spirit root, he would actually be bound by common sense. My rhythm of taking in everything has been broken, my dear. However, the next question was, even if his martial arts talent was ordinary, were all the black, white, blue, and white people that entered the mountain at the same time as him all martial arts prodigies? How come when they reached the body refining stage in 2 years, he could only tell Wang Lu to run away? The lady boss explained, it's not the same. Those people only increased their cultivation, not their innate aptitude. Cultivation, at least in the body forging realm, is very illusory. After swallowing a handful of elixirs, the profound power of several 60 years will be born. These stories are very realistic. Although Lingjian school focused more on basic skills and wouldn't let people become Xiantian masters just by eating pills, their cultivation process was still greatly simplified. However, you're different. With your current talent, even if you don't rely on any external help, it'll take you at most a year to reach the body forging realm's greater success. Moreover, I believe that your master must have some other intentions for going through so much trouble to improve your physique. Her master fiercely nodded, her face full of gratitude. Oh, little Ling heir, we really have a deep sisterly love, our hearts are connected. You guessed it right, I let him soak in the bath for 2 years because I wanted him to directly cultivate the non-phase sword bone. When she heard the words non-phase sword bone, the lady boss sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Are you kidding me? Asking him to start cultivating now? That's a king pill level body forging method. Oh, that's old news. A few years ago, I just improved the non-phase sword bone, so in theory, he can cultivate it in the foundation building stage, although it's a bit slower. The lady boss said, that's still a matter of foundation building stage. Right now, he hasn't even reached the chi cultivating stage. Wang Wu, explain it to me clearly. Who knew that Wang Wu actually sighed? There's no other way. With his void spirit root, if he doesn't cultivate the non-phase sword bone, he can forget about chi cultivating stage and foundation building stage for the rest of his life. Although in theory, the void spirit root is the best spirit root in the immortal cultivation world and has the best spiritual chi adaptability, but the spiritual chi adaptability is too high, which leads to the rapid absorption and rapid loss of spiritual chi, and ultimately, nothing. According to legend, immortal Qin and great ancestor De Sheng were taught by the immortal cultivation world, and only then did they officially open the path of immortal cultivation. I don't have the ability of a true immortal, so I can only use my own method to try it. At this point, even Wang Lu had roughly figured out his master's train of thought, but the lady boss obviously understood more. So that's how it is. That's why you try your best to improve his martial arts talent. Indeed, if he's a genius with unparalleled talent, it's possible to break through common sense and cultivate the non-phase sword bone in advance. Heh, I didn't expect you to really plan this carefully. That's why I want to ask, is that stupid beautiful woman's promise reliable or not? The lady boss. Wang Lu, you also heard it, your master is actually not that bad, she still treats you well. Wang Lu sneered. Then I'll ask one more thing, master, according to the current progress, when can I cultivate the non-phase sword bone? His master looked a bit embarrassed and whispered to herself, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, *ck me. 10 years. Are you trying to stir up trouble? The lady boss was also a bit surprised. That long? Hey, you're not going to use the current formula to soak him for 10 years, are you? The efficacy will continue to decrease, you have to upgrade the formula. As a result, his master also became anxious. Upgrade my ass. Right now, this formula has already made me bankrupt, how can I upgrade it? You're forcing me to sell my body, little Ling heir. From the side, Wang Lu coldly interjected, if you can't sell it, then just give up, master. *ck me. For a moment, the fifth elder almost vomited blood because of her traitorous disciple. However, before she could flip out, a certain girl with deep sisterly affection mercilessly exposed her. The lady boss glanced inside the cabin through the window and saw the wooden barrel in the bedroom. She curled her lips and said, it's not that exaggerated, right? It's just a tendon-changing, marrow-washing soup, that's all. It's a priceless treasure in the mortal world, but in the immortal cultivation world. It's just that the formula is expensive, but the materials are not that expensive. Wang Lu's direct subsidy should be enough. *ck me, little Ling heir, you actually want to ruin my plan. For a man, you threw away more than 10 years of sisterly affection, I'm really heartbroken. Wang Lu sighed. Let's cut the crap. Upgrade the formula for me. I beg for death. The fifth elder of the Lingjian school, if summed up her shortcomings, could be said to be too numerous to list. The only commendable thing was that she kept her promise, especially when she was caught in bed and forced into a corner, she would show her full integrity. After being pushed to death by her beloved disciple, Wang Lu, and her sister, the lady boss, the fifth elder finally agreed to upgrade the formula for Wang Lu. Moreover, it was done in one step. That night, she took out a bucket of fragrant medicinal soup. After soaking in it once, Wang Lu felt comfortable all over, as if he was walking on air. Although his physical strength did not directly increase, he could vaguely feel that his body contained infinite potential. And through the appraisal of the Lady Boss wisdom eye, at this time, Wang Lu could be regarded as the top martial arts genius. In terms of years, he was the son of an era that could only be seen once in an era. In this regard, Wang Lu was both happy and sighed. He was happy because the work of consolidating the foundation was finally completed, but he sighed because the previous 2 years were tantamount to playing with eggs. You can't say that. Without the 2 years of uninterrupted medicinal baths, my super muscle tendon changing and marrow cleansing soup wouldn't have been able to take effect. It'll only take you a month or 2 at most. While saying that, his master painfully calculated how long she would have to abstain from drinking in order to repay this bucket of super medicinal soup. For the time being, Wang Lu accepted this explanation. So, the next step is the non-phase sword bone that you mentioned? His master said, yes, it's the non-phase sword bone, which is also the basic skill of our non-phase peak. This. Speaking of which, you've been in the sect for 2 years, but I haven't introduced my cultivation method system to you. Wang Lu nodded. Yes, in the past year, I haven't seen you sober for more than a few days. If you're not drunk, then you're dead asleep. You really don't have time to introduce things to me. Ha ha ha, child, you're really humorous. In short, the foundation of my cultivation is non-phase method. As you know, it's my self-created cultivation method. I know that nowadays, many people have a prejudice against self-created cultivation methods. They always think that the more ancient the path of immortal cultivation, the more powerful it is. But in fact, immortal cultivation is like drinking water, only one knows whether it's cold or warm. No matter how excellent other people's cultivation method is, it's still other people's. Only self-created cultivation method is one's own. Wang Lu nodded his head as if he understood. This story teaches us that it's better to **** than to mess with other people's wives, right? If you can misinterpret me to this extent, I'll take it as you're right. In short, non-phase method is the most suitable cultivation method for me. After many years of continuous improvement, it already includes non-phase sword secret art, non-phase sword bone, non-phase immortal heart, and a series of branch cultivation methods. It has become a complete set of cultivation method system that is not inferior to stellar sword method. We're fellow martial brothers and sisters, 10 elders of heavenly sword hall, 1 deity stage, 8 yuanying stage, and 1 king pill, yet you still have the nerve to boast that non-phase method is not inferior to stellar sword method. You're indeed my good master, your lower limit is always unfathomable. F***ck. What do you know? Stellar sword method has been passed down for thousands of years. It indeed has endless mysteries. It is the top cultivation method in the immortal cultivation world. However, this cultivation method is dead, and the cultivation routine is very fixed. Except for a few talented geniuses who meet the requirements, other people simply can't display any of its power. Otherwise, in our Lingjian school, we can just practice stellar sword method together. Why would we need brilliant sword heart or 100 flowers Luotian? But my non-phase method is different. Its biggest feature is that it has strong adaptability and can keep pace with the times. F***ck, keep pace with the times? His master proudly said, yes, do you know how many times my non-phase method has been revised? You still want to revise it? That's right. If I have a better creative idea, why wouldn't I revise it? The biggest advantage of my non-phase method is that its framework is very inclusive, so I can change it however I want. Now, just the most basic method of absorbing the surrounding spiritual energy, I have already revised it more than 70 times. As for this set of non-phase method, it's already the 98th edition, I basically revise it once a year. As for non-phase sword method, non-phase immortal heart, and other branch methods, they can be changed at any time without hesitation, ha ha ha. For such a strange thing, Wang Lu had no way to evaluate it. And then, little Wang Lu, in the entire 9 regions, only this non-phase method that can be changed at any time can cover your void spirit root. In the immortal cultivation world, there hasn't been a void spirit root cultivation method spread outside for tens of thousands of years. Your cultivation can only cross the river by groping for stones, and the only thing that can accompany you to grope for stones is non-phase method. Do you understand? Wang Lu certainly understood. In fact, when his master mentioned the adaptability, he already understood why the Lingjian school chose such a strange master to guide him. Non-phase method is broad and profound, so it needs to be done step by step. In theory, it should be learned from absorbing spiritual energy, and when the qi refining stage is completed, when the magical power is overflowing, then learn non-phase sword bone to refine the body, and then build the foundation in one fell swoop. However, your situation is different. Under the void spirit root, your body is like a sieve, which can't gather spiritual energy, and thus can't form your own magical power. Therefore, my plan is to first learn non-phase sword bone, plug the gap, and then practice qi refining stage. Of course, let me make it clear, non-phase sword bone is a body refining method that still needs to be perfected, which can't be compared with the method passed down in the immortal world. Although in theory, it can indeed help your sieve to gather spiritual energy, but on the other hand, the spiritual energy adaptability of your void spirit root will more or less affect it. Therefore, don't expect to be as awesome as immortal Emperor Qin and great ancestor Desheng in 20 years, who became a true immortal from a mortal and became invincible in the 9 regions. Wang Lu sighed. It's okay, it doesn't matter if I can't become a true immortal, it's better than being a specimen. His master said with a smile, hey, actually, my non-phase sword bone has other advantages. I'm afraid even the immortal method is inferior to it. After you practice it, you'll know, you won't regret it. What kind of advantages did his master mean? Wang Lu really couldn't understand. He only knew that since he started to practice non-phase sword bone with her, as a professional adventurer, he had faintly regretted it. What kind of F*King method was this? Since the first day of practice, every day, he felt as if all the bones in his body were fractured, which was so painful that he wanted to die. What was even more refreshing was that, he clearly just followed his master's demonstration, made a few postures as if he was practicing the divine skill of subduing the dragon, and then ate a few dishes that his master personally cooked. Unexpectedly, on the 3rd day, he was so painful that he couldn't get out of bed. And what was rare was that his shameless master actually didn't block the bedside and ridicule him. If it were him, he would definitely block the bedside without any suspense. On the contrary, his esteemed master also comforted him. My routine of not cultivating qi but cultivating body cultivation first is very contrary to common sense. In the immortal cultivation world, there is almost no precedent. Because there is no magical power to protect the body, the pain of the old body being destroyed and the new body being created is simply unbearable. However, after soaking in the changing muscle and washing marrow soup for 2 years, your aptitude has been upgraded from a waste to a martial arts prodigy. In theory, your body can completely withstand the drastic change, and there won't be too much of a burden. However, I thought that you would need at least 1 or 2 weeks to have any effect in practicing non-phase sword bone. I didn't expect that in just 2 or 3 days, you would be able to cross the threshold. Void spirit root is indeed worthy to be the world's #1 spirit root. Once spiritual energy and magical power are involved, the progress is particularly fast. With that, she sighed, unfortunately, you haven't learned the internal vision method, otherwise, you would be able to witness the miracle of void spirit root. Wang Lu was really not interested in witnessing the miracle. After lying in bed like a vegetable for 2 days, he only wanted to ask one question: did I successfully practice it? His master nodded her head. The first layer of non-phase sword bone is almost complete. When your pain gradually subsides, it means that your cultivation base is stable, and you can display its effectiveness. To be honest, I was really worried that with your physique, you wouldn't be able to withstand the ordeal of the first layer, let alone to concentrate the change of 10 days to half a month into 3 days. I can't believe you actually survived. F***ck me, can you really do it or not? How could there be so many unexpected things? However, the success of the first layer of non-phase sword bone was really unexpected. According to his master, once he successfully cultivated non-phase sword bone, he could officially become an immortal cultivator. In other words, the problem of the void spirit root that troubled the entire Lingjian school's elder group has been solved. How could it be so fast? You've just cultivated the first layer and you already want to fly? Without the 10th or 8th layer, you can't plug this big leaky ladle. Take your time. From now on, you'll cultivate the foundation of my non-phase method. If you can cultivate qi within 3 months, you can consider yourself lucky. Wang Lu could not help but ask, 10th or 8th layer? How many layers does your non-phase sword bone actually have? So far, I've designed a total of 112 layers, and I've cultivated it to the 103rd layer. However, non-phase method is very inclusive, it keeps pace with the times, so there's no limit to its level. F***ck me, is there still a limit to it? Just how unreliable is your non-phase method? However, he had no other choice. Wang Lu could only practice it. After 3 days of cultivating the first layer, wouldn't he be able to reach the 10th layer in a month's time? Chapter 36. 1 month passed by in the blink of an eye. Wang Lu's cultivation life once again returned to the past 2 years. During the day, he would be a top student in the Misty Peak, and at night, he would go back to the non-phase peak to refine his bone. His days were simple and fulfilling. After experiencing the hardships of the first level, the cultivation of non-phase sword bone finally went on the right track and gradually became more humane. At least, it wouldn't make people hover between life and death. However, according to his master, it didn't mean that non-phase sword bone didn't have any side effects, but rather, after cultivating it to the first level, his pain tolerance had reached the point where he wouldn't be affected by favor or disgrace. Let alone the pain of the old body being destroyed and the new body being created, even if his partner was cut in his sleep, he wouldn't wake up because of the pain. After listening to this explanation, Wang Lu and his companions were immediately shocked. If people didn't feel pain, wouldn't they become a pit bull? However, on the bright side, it was much better than having menstrual pain every day, so he just had to make do with it. However, when he reached the 3rd level, Wang Lu discovered another deceptive thing about this martial art. It didn't have any attribute bonus. It stood to reason that this kind of body refining technique, whose lower limit was the foundation establishment stage, should have the ability to strengthen the body far above the mortal world's martial arts. Wang Lu broke through 3 levels in a week. Not to mention the dragon and elephant divine force, he should at least have the strength of an ox, running like the wind. However, this week's effort was like a stone sinking into the sea. What's worse, his long-distance running speed seemed to have decreased a bit. When he asked his master earnestly said, "Non-phase sword bone is broad and profound, so it's impossible to see results in a short period of time. 10 years later, you will understand master's painstaking efforts." Understand your ass. 10 years later, wait for this father to dig out your painstaking efforts. Thereupon, that night, Wang Lu ran away from home and went to the lady boss. Regarding Wang Lu's request, the lady boss gladly accepted it. In her words, training a rare martial arts genius was an irresistible temptation for any martial arts master. "Don't worry, I will definitely teach you everything I know. Although I don't know much about cultivation, even if it's just the martial arts of the mortal world, it will be enough for you to use until you reach foundation establishment." Wang Lu has also heard about this point. Legend has it that the top martial artists in the mortal world were able to kill qi cultivating stage cultivators. Until the cultivators successfully reached the foundation establishment stage, the Jade Mansion was formed, and the magical power was connected inside and outside, then the martial arts in the mortal world were basically ineffective. However, even in the elite gathering place like the Lingjian school, from the body forging stage to the foundation establishment stage was not a matter of 3 to 5 years. Therefore, the lady boss's martial arts would be effective for at least 3 to 5 years. Even if he succeeded in building his foundation in the future, the martial arts of the mortal world would not be effective immediately. However, there were still some common principles behind it. Thereupon, he officially began to practice, still starting from the divine skill of subduing the dragon. After all, it was a basic skill that the lady boss seriously recommended. It was said that it could strengthen the body in all aspects. As long as he mastered the first layer, he would have the strength of a tiger or leopard, comparable to a great martial master. Thereupon, Wang Lu mastered the first layer of the divine skill of subduing the dragon, in 3 days. On the day he succeeded, the lady boss specially made a whole pot of soy sauce pig trotters to celebrate Wang Lu's success. Her thoughtfulness made people feel warm. However, after eating the pig trotters and practicing martial arts with the lady boss in the forest, a problem arose. I say, lady boss, according to what you said, right now I should have the speed of a cheetah, the strength of a tiger, and the tenacity of a bison, right? The lady boss nodded. Yes, after mastering the first layer of the divine skill of subduing the dragon, you should at least have this standard. What's wrong? Wang Lu was silent for a long time. I always feel that there is no change. The lady boss was surprised. Impossible. Your dragon vein has just formed, and your true chi is born inside your body. I can see it clearly. How could there be no effect, unless... Speaking to this, the lady boss seemed to think of something. Her pair of shapely eyebrows deeply twisted together, like a worried little wife. I think I understand what's going on. This is the overlay phenomenon. Overlay phenomenon? The lady boss helplessly explained, this is not difficult to understand. High-level martial arts have an overlay effect on low-level martial arts. For example, if you cultivate the 6-yang snow melting technique, and then after a period of time you cultivate the more profound 9-yang divine skill, then your internal force attribute will reflect the characteristics of the 9-yang divine skill, and the 6-yang snow melting technique will be overlaid by the 9-yang divine skill. But now, although the divine skill of subduing the dragon is the closest martial art to an immortal cultivation method, the non-phase sword bone is a genuine immortal cultivation method. Therefore, it is overlaid. Hearing this, Wang Lu simply wanted to vomit blood. This non-phase sword bone, how much of a fraud is it? It doesn't add any attribute, but it also overlaid other people's attribute increasing cultivation method. Master, you can actually create this kind of exotic cultivation method. Your disciple really kneels down to you. The lady boss also wryly smiled. Let's get over it. I know a little bit about the non-phase sword bone. Although the early stage is indeed a bit of a fraud, it is indeed worthy of the name of an immortal cultivation method. The divine skill of subduing the dragon cannot be compared to it. Lady boss, instead of using this kind of nonsense reason to persuade me to get over it, why don't you be a bit more direct and persuade me to fantasize about the scene of my master being gang-raped? Seeing that her persuasion was ineffective, the lady boss hurriedly said, if you don't want to practice the divine skill of subduing the dragon, then don't practice it. In any case, it's just a basic attribute increasing cultivation method. We can directly practice the fighting method. I happen to have a few sets of sword arts that are more suitable for you. Wang Lu shook his head. Forget it, my master still has a set of non-phase sword art waiting to be used to swindle me. That's true. How about this, let's practice footwork. This won't be a problem. Wang Wu has always ignored the technique of movement. There's no lightness skill in the non-phase method, so let's practice this. Footwork? Dodging and short-distance burst? That's possible. Although in the future, when he succeeded in the immortal cultivation stage, there would be nothing he couldn't do, and the mortal world's footwork would simply be a joke, but before reaching the foundation establishment stage, even the cultivators of the Lingjian school basically didn't have the ability to fly. Being able to use it until the foundation establishment stage is enough. "Master, please accept this disciple's worship." Then, Wang Lu once again inserted his chopsticks into the rice bowl and bowed his head in worship. In the next few days, Wang Lu followed the lady boss and began to practice footwork. The strange thing was, the footwork that the lady boss taught him was neither the legendary, water-rippling subtle step, that had the strongest dodging ability, nor the ghost shadow step, that was known to be able to turn into a phantom and confuse the enemy with an afterimage. Instead, it was called winding step, which required an amazing balance and toughness to display. As the name implied, the main point of winding step was to entangle the opponent. Once the opponent was entangled, no matter what, the opponent would not be able to get rid of it. Like a sticky candy, it didn't emphasize on dodging, and it also lacked explosive ability. However, in a one-on-one fight, it could often display a miraculous effect. Wang Lu didn't know why the lady boss would deliberately teach him this kind of footwork, but she wouldn't be like his master who was deceiving him. Therefore, the winding step was the winding step. It was good enough that he could learn it. In this way, Wang Lu began his stressful life of being a top student, sword bone, and winding step. In the morning, he would do long-distance running, take a medicinal bath, and refine his bones. At noon, he would take a cultural class at the Misty Peak to earn sect points. After class, he would go down the mountain to find the lady boss to practice winding step, and at night, he would return to the non-phase peak to sleep. 2 months later, the winding step had reached perfection. Although he didn't have the ability to move like flying, or to transform into shadows, but after mastering the essence of this footwork, Wang Lu didn't think that the winding step was inferior to other footwork like floating waves subtle step. This was a magical footwork that could bring out the user's strength to the extreme. This point was especially profound when he was picking herbs on the non-phase peak to earn pocket money. In the past, when he went to pick herbs on the mountain, Wang Lu could only bully wild monkeys, hares, and pheasants. When he encountered wild boars, wild wolves, and the like, he could only run away like a stray dog. But now that he had reached the advanced level of the winding step, although he didn't cultivate any offensive martial art, and his master's non-phase sword bone was especially deceptive, even if he encountered those ferocious beasts, he still had the strength to fight. In order to prove himself, on the 3rd day of reaching the advanced level of the winding step, Wang Lu went deep into the wilderness of the non-phase peak and found a one-eyed black bear that had a grudge with him for 2 years. For the past 2 years, when Wang Lu was picking herbs on the mountain, he hated this bear the most because it occupied the growing area of the spirit grass. The bear was not a high-level monster that could summon the wind and summon the rain, but it was just a stupid, lazy, and stupid bear. However, in the Spirit Sword Mountain, where the Feng Shui line converged, it knew the benefits of the spirit grass. Every day, like a gardener, it patrolled the mountain, protecting the spirit grass. Thus, it had an irreconcilable feud with Wang Lu, who relied on picking herbs to earn money. In the past 2 years, whenever he encountered this stupid bear, Wang Lu could only turn around and run away. In any case, by relying on the terrain advantage, coupled with his unique dexterity and endurance, he was not afraid of being hurt by the bear. However, his plan to pick herbs had been repeatedly blocked. However, now that he had reached the advanced level of the winding step, Wang Lu's confidence was bursting. He thought that today was the day for a gentleman to take his revenge. Thus, he was too lazy to wait for the black bear to appear. He directly strode into the black bear's cave. That day, Wang Lu woke up very early. When he arrived at the mountain, the sky was still dark. Inside the cave, the black bear's saliva dripped from its mouth as if it was having a good dream. Wang Lu bluntly went up to it and kicked its nose. Woo! The heart-wrenching and lung-splitting howl, as well as the gushing nosebleed, made Wang Lu feel incomparably refreshed. The black bear covered its nose and stood up. Its single eye, which was filled with tears, emitted a blood-red hateful light. F***CKU. It's been 2 years, are you done yet? Usually, you come up the mountain to steal my spirit grass and elixirs, but now, you actually come to my door, calling me in bed and plotting against me. Did I provoke you? F***CKU, go to hell. Oh. The black bear let out a stern roar as it waved its paws, causing a gust of wind to blow. The pounce of this wild beast was enough to shatter gold and shatter stone. However, Wang Lu was not flustered at all. With a move of his feet and a swing of his upper body, he nimbly dodged the sweep of the bear's paw. Animals like black bears looked clumsy, but in reality, they were much faster and more agile than ordinary humans. After missing its first attack, the black bear followed up with another palm strike. Pang Shua's body also pounced forward, squeezing the opponent's space to dodge. As for Wang Lu, he had just taken a step back, so his center of gravity was unstable. However, in the next moment, Wang Lu's figure flashed, and like a ghost, he circled around the black bear like a ghost. Taking advantage of the fact that the black bear couldn't stop himself, he climbed onto its back. The winding steps requirement for flexibility was vividly reflected. The essence of this footwork was that when it was needed, it was clearly moving close to the body, but it seemed as if it was far away, making it impossible for the opponent to reach it. After successfully dodging twice, Wang Lu had already figured out the opponent's background. There was no pressure at all. As long as he relied on this set of footwork, even in a narrow space like the cave, he didn't need to be afraid of this crazy beast. The only problem was that, although he wouldn't be injured, Wang Lu, who had never learned any fighting techniques, couldn't hurt this black bear with its rough skin and thick flesh. There was no other way, so he could only exhaust it. In any case, Wang Lu's endurance was astonishing, so he didn't believe that he couldn't exhaust it to death. After more than 4 hours, when Wang Lu felt a little hungry, the black bear, who had been practicing the mad dog fist for the whole morning, finally couldn't hold on any longer and lay down with a thud. This slightly intelligent black bear had completely lost its temper after being tortured by Wang Lu. No matter how he hit it, he couldn't hit it. Running away, that bastard was still relentlessly following behind it. From time to time, he would use his magical footwork to trip it up, causing it to fall like an idiot. Then, he would take the opportunity to kick its nose. After 4 hours, the black bear's nose was almost broken, and it was covered in mud from falling into the forest. As for Wang Lu, he was still calmly stepping on its back. Woo woo, the black bear let out a weak howl, and finally unwillingly showed its weakness. After Wang Lu heard this, he walked down from its back. The black bear struggled to prop itself up, and slowly crawled back to its cave. Then, it pulled out a white cloth from somewhere, grabbed it with its claws, and slowly shook it. Fuck, this bear knows this move. This time, even Wang Lu was shocked. He thought to himself, Immortal Path Sect is indeed worthy of being called Immortal Path Sect. Even this stupid bear can understand human nature, and it can even pull a white flag and act cute. Well, since you've admitted defeat, there's no need for me to kill you. We've been neighbors for 2 years, so let's get along well in the future. Wang Lu patted the black bear's head, turned around, and left, leaving only his lonely back reflected in the black bear's tearful eyes. Complacently returning to his own cabin, Wang Lu was surprised to find that his master, who would normally be drunk like a fool at this time, was actually sitting in the living room, reading a book. King Pill Technique. What the hell, this fool actually knows how to read. He actually didn't hold the book upside down. He's actually reading a serious cultivation book, not a ******. My dear master, your shameless rogue image has collapsed. When his master saw Wang Lu, she was also surprised. Hey, your face is full of spring radiance. Could it be that you've been looking for flowers? I'm asking you a question. During this time, you've been cultivating very hard. Although I insist that mortal world's martial arts are purely a waste of time, fortunately, you didn't delay the cultivation of non-phase sword bone, which is very good. His master said and closed the King Pill Technique in her hand. By the way, I also want to tell you a piece of good news. Congratulations, your non-phase sword bone has reached the last level before the qi refining stage. Wang Lu raised his eyebrows. The last level? Yes, after completing the 8th layer of non-phase sword bone, you can officially start the qi refining stage. Moreover, don't you often complain that this non-phase sword bone is deceiving you, that it doesn't add any attribute? In fact, the change of non-phase sword bone has already happened, it's just that you haven't been aware of it. However, after you complete the 8th layer, there will be a significant improvement. Unless you're black-hearted and blind, otherwise, you will never say something stupid like this non-phase sword bone is deceiving you. Wang Lu cried out in surprise. He was stunned by his master's self-righteous face, as if what she said was true. Then let's wait and see. According to the speed of the previous 7 layers, in a week at most, the result will be clear. Whether this non-phase sword bone is really a peerless technique or a pure deceiving you, at that time, it will be clear at a glance. It's not that easy. His master coldly said, the cultivation of non-phase sword bone is not something that can be completed by just cultivating in seclusion. Wang Lu asked, then what else do you want? Thereupon, his master counted with her fingers. First is the medicinal pill. From the 8th layer onwards, the cultivation of non-phase sword bone must be supplemented with medicinal pills. For daily cultivation, you need to take a dose of non-phase bone strengthening powder every day, and when you break through, you need to take a non-phase bone strengthening pill. Next is the spirit stone. When you break through, you need to use the surrounding spiritual energy to quickly wash your meridians. Relying on the essence gathering array to gather the spiritual energy is not efficient enough. At least, you need several low-rank spirit stones. Finally, there is a master teacher. When you break through, the spiritual energy will go berserk, so you need a master teacher like me to hold the line. Among these 3 conditions, I can easily solve the last 2 for you. However, regarding the medicinal pill, you need to work hard on it. To refine the non-phase bone strengthening pill, you need a vermilion fruit. I don't have this thing, and I can't afford it. I'm sorry, even if you scold me, I can't afford it. Right now, the elder's discount price is 3,000 spirit stones per vermilion fruit. Even if I can afford it, I won't buy it, do you understand? Wang Lu was shocked. The price of a vermilion fruit at 3,000 spirit stones is indeed not expensive. It's not strange for it to be 10 times more expensive outside. The problem is that it's an elixir that only cultivators after the foundation building realm can use. I'm just a small fry in the body refining realm, and I actually need a vermilion fruit or 3,000 spirit stones to assist my cultivation. His master smiled bitterly and didn't explain anything. Instead, he continued, vermilion fruits actually grow quite a lot in the Blue Cloud Peak. However, that's the sect's strategic resource reserve. Even the sect leader can't casually go there to pick them. Only disciples like you who have just started cultivating and are still at a low realm are not restricted. I don't think I need to explain the reason, right? It was indeed not hard to understand. It was to encourage the young disciples to bravely explore and challenge their limits. It just so happens that in a few days, the Misty Peak and the Carefree Peak will organize new disciples to go to the Blue Cloud Peak for training. You should go with them. Think of a way to pick a few vermilion fruits. I'll help you refine the bone strengthening pill and bone strengthening powder. What if I can't pick any? His master thought for a moment. Actually, it's not a big deal. Even if you don't have the bone strengthening pill, you can still make do with a lower grade medicinal pill. However, your cultivation speed will be at least 10 times slower. Think about it yourself. Then what else was there to say? What we're lacking now is time. Let's go up the mountain. Chapter 37. Huh? You want to go to Blue Cloud Peak? Outside the Tin Cloud Hall of Misty Peak, a tall black and white disciple looked at the junior brother in front of him with great surprise. Oh no, with the red and white robe he was wearing, he should be called senior brother. The red and white senior brother heard his surprised question and just nodded. Yes, I heard from master that he wants to find senior brother you to sign up, is that right? The black and white disciple smiled bitterly. I am indeed in charge of organizing this Blue Cloud Peak trial, but I didn't expect a true disciple to sign up. Also, senior brother, forgive me for my rudeness, this trial usually requires at least the chi refining stage to participate. At least as far as I know, there is no precedent of a disciple at the body refining stage participating. Moreover, the black and white disciple didn't say anything. Even if you are at the body refining stage, you should at least cultivate to the peak of the body refining stage. Now, no matter how I look at it, you don't look like you are at the Xiantian master level. But forget it, it's not like it's a written rule. For this kind of thing, a disciple who has only been in the sect for 4 years and is at the chi refining stage has no right to make decisions. I'll report to master and let him decide. Oh. You mean, that child Wang Lu also wants to participate in the trial? At the top of Misty Peak, Lu Xian asked the disciple in the hall in surprise. Master, that is indeed what he said. This is not normal. Usually, there are very few true disciples who would participate in this kind of trial. Moreover, his cultivation is not up to standard. According to my observation, he is at most at the 2nd or 3rd level of the body refining stage. He still needs some time to reach the peak of the body refining stage. But he is a true disciple after all, so it is not convenient for me to refuse, so. Halfway through, Lu Xian waved his hand and interrupted. No need to refuse, count him in. The disciple raised his head in surprise. But, master, it is already very difficult for me and junior sister Hua to take care of 4 new disciples. If there is another body refining stage member, we won't be able to guarantee our safety. Don't worry, there is no surefire trial. If everything is taken care of, what kind of trial is it? It was purely a vacation. Moreover, since that Wang Lu is a disciple of non-phase peak, you don't need to worry about his life or death. When the time comes, just focus on the other 4 junior brothers and sisters. You and Huaying should be enough. Black and White was shocked. I don't need to care about his life or death. How could this be? Although she had long heard that the relationship between her master and non-phase peak's 5th martial aunt was not good, but wasn't this implicating the innocent? This was too. Alright, Yu Yun, this trip to the Clear Sky Peak is also a learning experience for you. There are a lot of things that you need to arrange. You should go and prepare first. If you don't understand something, you can ask the experienced senior brothers. They might not necessarily be disciples of my Misty Peak, you can also ask the disciples of the Carefree Peak. Make sure you get it done, understand? Yes, master. Senior brother, your application has been approved by master. 1 week later, at this time, let's gather here and go to the Clear Sky Peak together. Speaking to this point, Yu Yun hesitated for a moment and then added, in this week, I ask senior brother to prepare well and step up your cultivation. Although we won't go too deep in the Clear Sky Peak, at most we will stop at the Azure Dragon Gorge, but there will still be risks. Junior sister Huaying and I entered the sect 2 years earlier than you, so our cultivation is not high. When the time comes, we may not be able to take care of each other well. Wang Lu smiled and said, rest assured, at that time, I will definitely help you. We are fellow disciples, if you need help, just say it, no need to be polite. Yu Yun. Then I wish senior brother everything goes smoothly. Turning his head, this black and white disciple smiled bitterly in his heart, truly worthy to be a disciple of non-phase peak. In the past, he walked on the immortal path with ease, but after just 2 years, his brain has a problem. In the following week, Wang Lu didn't waste even a bit of time. His non-phase sword bone cultivation continued to advance. Although the progress obviously encountered a bottleneck, and the 8th layer of the non-phase sword bone couldn't be opened, the effect of the first 7 layers began to emerge little by little. Every day, when he practiced, he always felt that there was a gentle force scattered among his limbs and bones, waiting for the right time to break out of the cocoon and amaze the world. Although this opportunity still seemed far away, Wang Lu already faintly understood that non-phase sword bone was indeed not a deceptive method. In addition, when she heard that Wang Lu was going to climb the clear sky peak, the lady boss taught him a sword technique called soft cloud sword. This sword technique has a deep relationship with your good friend. This sword technique was first created by a member of the royal family of the Grand Cloud Empire who had reached the martial saint realm. Later on, it became a secret sword technique of the royal family. After thousands of years of improvement, it became today's soft cloud sword. This sword technique has no other characteristics except for its strong defense and high toughness. If it can be matched with the soft sword of the Grand Cloud Empire, it's almost a life-saving talisman. Of course, I don't have a divine weapon in my hand, but this purple soft sword can be used. If you can practice this sword technique, at least you'll be a bit more secure on this trip to the clear sky peak. As the old saying goes, 100 days to practice the knife, 1,000 days to practice the spear, and 10,000 days to practice the sword. In 1 week, no matter how amazing Wang Lu's talent was, he could only practice the sword technique, but to this extent was enough. Because when your sword bone cultivation is successful and you start to cultivate qi, you'll have the non-phase sword technique to practice. This soft cloud sword technique can be eliminated, unless you have the leisure to comprehend the sword intent. But the soft cloud sword intent doesn't have any flavor. The lady boss's evaluation of the soft cloud sword technique was average, but she carefully selected this sword technique to teach, so how could its value be ordinary? Wang Lu was pleasantly surprised to find that this soft cloud sword technique and winding steps were simply a perfect match. The combination of the two was not as simple as 1 + 1. This sword technique that was good at dispersing force, coupled with the toughness of the winding steps, multiplied the defensive ability. On the day when he mastered the sword technique, Wang Lu went to the non-phase peak's Black Bear cave to spar with his old neighbor. That black bear was defeated by Wang Lu last time. This week, he worked hard, constantly gathering spirit herbs and eating them. When he saw Wang Lu again, his body was already a size bigger. When he saw Wang Lu, he roared and rushed at him, his speed almost doubled. Of course, after a week, Wang Lu's winding steps had also improved. If he really had to fight, he was still not afraid. But at this time, he wanted to test his sword technique, so he didn't dodge, but raised his sword to block the attack. With a loud bang, the black bear's 10,000 gene force was completely dissolved by the purple soft sword. Wang Lu stood still, holding his sword. Although his body suffered a huge shock, his complexion didn't change, and his body didn't move. And after this round, the result was needless to say. Half an hour later, the vigorous black bear was beaten into a ball, like a lump of meat. Then, he pulled a piece of white cloth to cover his head, as if he was holding his head and squatting down. After venting his desire on the black bear, oh no, after finding his full confidence, Wang Lu carried his soft sword and jogged all the way to the misty peaks Ting Cloud Hall. At this time, there were already 5 or 6 people gathered in front of the hall. Among them, the tallest one was the organizer, Yu Yun. This black and white disciple, who had been in the sect for 4 years, was happily chatting with several junior brothers and sisters. Seeing Wang Lu running over, Yu Yun quickly called out, "Senior brother Wang Lu, here, here." When Yu Yun called out, the other people also turned their heads. When they turned their heads, Wang Lu was happy. "Oh, isn't this junior brother Zhu Qin and junior brother Wen Bao?" Zhu Qin put on a fake smile and cupped his hands in greeting. "Senior brother Wang Lu, good morning." Then, the others also followed and saluted. No matter what they thought, they had to abide by the sect's rules. Especially in front of the Ting Cloud Hall, where there were so many people coming and going. If they were caught by the disciplinary elder disrespecting their senior brother, they would definitely be punished to the point of being soft. After exchanging greetings, Yuyun specifically introduced the experiential learning team and itinerary to Wang Lu. This trip to the Blue Cloud Peak was led by two senior black and white disciples, Yuyun and Huaying. The other participants were two black and white disciples and two blue and white disciples. All of them were newcomers who entered the mountain together 2 years ago. Speaking of which, 2 years ago, when Wang Lu had just crossed the Golden Bridge, he met two Misty Peak cultivators. At that time, they said that although the Misty Peak was an outer sect, the sect's disciples were not necessarily inferior to the inner sect's disciples. Now, it seemed that this was indeed the case. The two blue and white disciples who participated in this experiential learning were both at the qi cultivating stage. One of them, a taciturn girl, unexpectedly broke through to the 8th level of qi cultivating stage. Although her realm was not stable, and the amount of magical power she could actually use might not be more than that of a 9th level cultivator, but 8th level was 8th level after all. It was simply shocking. According to Yu Yun's introduction, this junior sister named Yu Xinyao actually had a 2nd-grade earth spirit root. Based on this point alone, she was stronger than most of the inner sect disciples. Unfortunately, she lacked the determination to forge ahead, as well as the spirit to take risks. Thus, she didn't walk on the immortal path and was not fated to be an inner sect disciple. In this Clear Sky Peak experiential learning team, including Wang Lu, there were two 6th level qi cultivating stage cultivators, one 8th level qi cultivating stage cultivators, three 9th level qi cultivating stage cultivators, and one 2nd level body refining stage cultivator. This team could be regarded as a low-level cultivator team. In the 9 regions, many low-level immortal cultivation sects would often send this kind of team out for business. The team's composition was clear and well-behaved, but the appearance of a certain red and white disciple ruined everything. In terms of cultivation, a 2nd-level body refining stage cultivator was undoubtedly at the bottom, but in terms of identity, the red and white robe was so dazzling that even Yu Yun, who was leading the team, had to respectfully call him senior brother. To make matters worse, because of the existence of Wang Lu, even the design of the team's formation became troublesome. It stood to reason that the one with the lowest cultivation should be the second from the bottom, and junior sister Huaying would be responsible for taking care of him. However, according to another theory, the red and white true disciple with the highest status should be the first to bear the brunt, side by side with Yu Yun. Yu Yun and Huaying discussed for a while, but to no avail. Finally, Wang Lu volunteered, "I'll be the first. Let me, the senior brother, protect everyone." Yu Yun spurted out on the spot, thinking, "Fine, in any case, this is your choice, I don't care." Thereupon, the group of people lined up. Yu Yun and Wang Lu took the lead, followed by Zhu Qin and Wen Bao, and the two outer court disciples in front of Huaying. The 7 people faintly formed a Big Dipper formation, echoing each other from a distance. Then, the team set off from the 10 Cloud Hall. Through the shrinking formation, they directly arrived at the Clear Sky Peak. Chapter 38. The Clear Sky Peak was one of the 12 peaks of the Spirit Sword sect. It had the widest area, occupying more than half of the total area of the Lingjian school. It was the place where the school planted spirit grass and spirit medicine, as well as raised immortal birds and spirit beasts. The Clear Sky Peak was divided into the Big and the Small Clear Sky Peak. Among them, the Small Clear Sky Peak was one of the 4 independent immortals' caves on the immortal path right behind the cloud wave map. However, its essence was different from the other immortals' caves. The Small Clear Sky Peak was created by the ancestors of the Spirit Sword sect, using their great magical ability, by taking a piece of space from the Clear Sky Peak and overlapping it with the Misty Peak. It existed both in the Big Clear Sky Peak and in the hinterland of the Misty Peak. The Small Clear Sky Peak was mainly used to cultivate some low-level spirit grass and spirit beasts. In addition, it could also be used as an excellent experiential learning place for the disciples. Because of the layers of restrictions imposed on this space, the spirit beasts and monsters that lived there were clearly defined areas. Therefore, as long as they didn't wander around, the risk of experiential learning was highly controllable. As for the immortal path, it was actually the least important function. Now, Yu Yun was leading this small team of cultivators to the small clear sky peak. In the big clear sky peak, even level 4 and 5 monsters were not uncommon. These chi refining stage cultivators going there would simply become a side dish for them. In theory, from the small clear sky peak to the Azure Dragon Gorge, the strongest monster was only a Category 2 first-rank monster. Although Yu Yun and his team might not be able to defeat it, it was not a problem for them to escape with their junior brothers and sisters. Then, I will re-emphasize the main points of this experiential learning. Please don't mind me being long-winded. This is everyone's first experiential learning, so it's not wrong to be a bit more cautious. Although there are countless restrictions on the small clear sky peak to ensure safety, almost every few years, there would be casualties. This experiential learning is absolutely not a game, do you understand? In front of the entrance of the small clear sky peak, the gentle Yu Yun showed a rare serious face. Following his master's instruction, he began to do a historical review. After being scared by him, the new disciples showed a nervous look and said that they would strictly follow their senior brother's instruction, except for a certain calm and composed senior brother Hong Bai. Successor disciple was indeed worthy of being a successor disciple. If he didn't know the details beforehand, just by looking at his confident expression, he would have thought that this senior brother Hong Bai had already reached the foundation establishment stage. Yu Yun sighed in his heart. He thought about his master's instruction to ignore this successor apprentice brother. It seemed that there was some truth to it. Thus, he could only ignore this true disciple senior brother for the time being. He explained the essential points of the experiential learning one by one and finally concluded. This experiential learning is expected to last for 5 days. The initial schedule is for the first 3 days to pass through the Full Moon Valley to the entrance of the Azure Dragon Gorge, and then return from the Lotus Pond. During this period of time, everyone is free to gather any medicinal herbs you wish. Of course, the prerequisite is that you have sufficient gathering skills so that you don't waste them. You can also participate in the battles along the way, but you must act according to your capabilities and strictly follow my and junior sister Hui Ying's instructions. Understood. No problem. Yes. Alright. Yo. What the F***CK, what's the meaning of this? True disciple senior brother, don't scare me. Seeing the brilliant smile on Wang Lu's face, Yu Yun could only helplessly shake his head. Let's go. The group of people then officially set foot on the small clear sky peak. Yu Yun and Wang Lu took the lead, while Huaying followed behind. The entrance of the small clear sky peak was protected by countless spells and restrictions, isolating all the monsters and beasts in the mountain. The group of people walked steadily without any danger. However, the mountain road was rugged, and Yu Yun, who was leading the way, often chose the dangerous road to advance, making the black, white, blue, and white newcomers quite uncomfortable. Especially the 2 female cultivators of the Carefree Peak. Their cultivation was limited, so they couldn't be like senior sister Huaying, who could walk on the mountain road as if they were walking on flat ground. They also couldn't be like senior brother Zhu Qin and senior brother Wen Bao, who could use their hands and feet without caring about the mud and moss. This road was as awkward as it could be. Yu Yun, who was leading the way, secretly laughed in his heart. Sure enough, they are newcomers. Although their cultivation is good, they lack experience and can't even use 30% of their skills. Even if the 9th level of the Qi cultivating stage is not enough to freely use the lightning spell, but before they reached the Qi cultivating stage, they had already reached the body refining stage and had the strength of a Xiantian master. But have you ever heard of a Xiantian master who can't even climb a mountain? The body refining stage of the Lingjian school could already be considered as having a solid foundation, but reaching the Xiantian master in just 2 years was still a shortcut. These newcomers only had a high cultivation base, but they still couldn't control their own strength. Especially in the face of those cultivators who only cared about their cultivation and didn't have a solid foundation, they would have a good chance of winning in a cross-stage challenge. Whether this kind of dedication to the foundation was right or wrong, Wen certainly couldn't say for sure, but, in this non-stop running and climbing, she experienced the rapid growth of her strength. The feeling was really good. Compared to the past few months of practicing qi cultivating stage in the carefree peak, improving one's cultivation was more enjoyable. Especially looking at the back of senior brother Yun, when Yun's heart was filled with yearning. Yun was only at the 6th level of qi cultivating stage, which was not much stronger than her, but the strength he showed today was worthy of the 2 words senior brother. He only entered the sect 2 years earlier than her. 2 years later, could she reach Yun's level? After an unknown amount of time, the sun gradually set in the west, and the trekking in the barren mountain became exceptionally difficult. Yun finally stopped and took the initiative to say, "That's enough, everyone can take a rest." Everyone suddenly sat down on the ground weakly. From the morning until now, they had been running non-stop for the whole day. Moreover, they hadn't even eaten or drunk anything. First of all, congratulations to everyone. After the hard work during the day, according to the progress, we can rest tonight. Wen couldn't help but applaud. But, before you rest, there is one thing I want to tell you, that is. Junior sister Huiying and I didn't prepare dinner for everyone. If you are hungry, please be self-sufficient. Wen and her companions were all shocked. No way. You didn't even prepare dinner. No wonder when you gathered everyone, you specifically told us not to bring food and water. It turns out that you were waiting to cheat us. Senior brother Yun, you really hit it too deeply. We thought that you were a loyal and honest person. Don't worry, Clear Sky Peak is rich in natural resources. Edible wild fruits and vegetables are everywhere. As long as your herbology course is passable, I believe it won't be difficult to fill your stomach. If you're lucky, you may even be able to pick some rare spirit herbs. Just as Yun finished speaking, they heard a simple and honest voice laughing, "Oh, red berries, I didn't think there would be one here." Then, a fatty named Biyao reached out and picked a red fruit from a nearby book. Without wiping it, he directly put it into his mouth. Then, the next moment, he painfully vomited and coughed non-stop. This red berry, why is it so bitter? Why is it so bitter? Yun sighed, "Junior brother Biyao, that is not a red berry, but a red thorn fruit. It can't be eaten directly. It needs to be processed at least 3 times to remove the smell." Biyao asked in a daze, red thorn fruit? At the same time, Wen and Yuxinyao also looked at each other. They had heard of red berry, but this was the first time they heard of red thorn fruit. Yun said with a smile, "Clear Sky Peak is rich in natural resources. More than 60% of the spirit herbs in the 9 regions can be found here. Even in the small Clear Sky Peak, the variety of herbs is incomparable to the Misty Peak and the Carefree Peak. As a newcomer, being able to recognize 1/10 of the surrounding plants is already considered good enough. Speaking of which, how is everyone's herbology grade?" Biyao wryly smiled. "Primary herbology, C+. Yuxinyao lightly said, "Primary herbology, A+. Wen curled her lips. "Primary herbology, B+. Then it was Zhu Qin's turn. "Intermediate herbology, C+. Yun was taken aback. "Intermediate herbology? Not bad, it only took you 2 years to reach the intermediate level. You are much better than your senior brother when I was young." However, this honest man secretly laughed in his heart. "However, your senior brother is not the same as before. In these 2 years, I have worked hard, and now I have reached B+ in advanced herbology. I am expected to reach the A level within this year. Junior brothers and sisters, please work hard, ha 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 ha." However, when he turned his head, he saw a certain taciturn senior brother red and white. Yun thought for a moment. Although the other party was a bit unsociable, it was not good to isolate him. He was about to open his mouth to strike up a conversation, but then he saw Zhu Qin anxiously said, "Senior brother, you don't." Unfortunately, the words were already at the tip of his mouth, he couldn't stop himself. "I don't know about this successor brother's grade," Wang Lu smiled. "Professional herbology, A+. Thank you for asking." Yu Yun spurted out on the spot. "What the F***ck? Expert A+. Moreover, you have just entered the professional herbology for 2 years? Are you the reincarnation of Shenong?" Wang Lu was very modest. "How could I? I am just a bookworm." Chapter 39. This successor apprentice brother, you are not joking, right? Wang Lu smiled. "It's just a professional level, it's not worth mentioning. It's not good to joke about this." Yu Yun almost spurted out his saliva again. "What the F***ck, you don't even care about professional level. Is your goal the Sea of Stars?" Wang Lu continued to be modest. "You flatter me. For the time being, I just want to get the title of erudite." Yu Yun was surprised again. Erudite? That's a title that can only be awarded if you get an A grade in more than 6 professional-level cultural courses. The sect points awarded are enough for me to lead a team in the trial for 20 times. Wang Lu said, "Now I still need to get an A grade in the professional-level Western Common Language. When this trial is over, I will apply for the assessment. If nothing unexpected happens, I will be able to get it." What the F***ck, just one more to become erudite? So, senior apprentice brother, you already have 5 professional levels? You've only been in the sect for 2 years, right? Yu Yun became more and more surprised. Hui Ying, who was next to him, was also surprised. Could it be that the genius successor apprentice brother Wang Lu who rose to fame some time ago is you? Wang Lu insisted on being modest. "How can I be called a genius? I just use the time that others use to drink tea to read books." This was really not a lie. In the first 2 years of entering the sect, most disciples were busy with cultivation and daily tasks that the sect had to do. As a successor apprentice, Wang Lu was not bound by the rules of the sect. Every day, besides the routine long-distance running and medicinal baths, he had nothing to do. In desperation, he could only study hard to earn points to pass the time. In addition, he was indeed talented, especially good at reading and exams, so it was only natural that he became a top student. And Wang Lu's name as a top student was not well known in the Lingjian school. On one hand, Wang Lu himself was low-key. He came to class and left after class, never talking nonsense with others. On the other hand, the disciples of the Lingjian school each had their own cultivation. Who would have the time to care about a new disciple who had only been in the sect for 2 years? Even if he was the literati star and was a top student, so what? If he succeeded in building his foundation in 2 years, it would be worth paying attention to. In the end, no matter how loud the slogan of quality education in Lingjian school was, after all, the cultural course was not valued. However, this unvalued cultural course played an important role in this small clear sky peak experience. For Zhu Qin and the others, they couldn't recognize 70 to 80% of the plants around them. Even Yu Yun, who was leading the team, could only recognize 60 to 70% of the plants. But in the eyes of a professional, there was no secret in this small clear sky peak. While other people were struggling with the difference between the red berry fruit and the red thorn fruit, and whether a bunch of seemingly edible fruits could really be eaten, Wang Lu had already leisurely walked around in a circle, and when he came back, he was holding a bunch of wild fruits in his hand. "It's all edible. Don't stand on ceremony." There was a moment of silence. No one made a move. Yu Xinyao and Wen Yin, the 2 carefree disciples, because they were not familiar with Wang Lu, and considering the huge gap between outer court disciples and successor disciples, they didn't dare to make a move. Needless to say, in the past 2 years, Zhu Qin and Wang Lu had been quarreling fiercely. The accumulated blood he vomited was enough to fill a reservoir. How could he be willing to accept Wang Lu's kindness? So in the end, it was the most thoughtless Wen Bao who broke the deadlock. The fatty reached out and took the largest wild fruit in his hand, chewing on it. The way he ate was particularly eye-catching. Wen Bao stretched out his hand, and the two girls were a bit less scrupulous. They each took a fruit and quietly ate it. Yu Yun and Huiying were self-sufficient, needless to say. Only Zhu Qin, who was stuck in the same place, felt uncomfortable. If he said he was hungry, then he was really hungry. A 9th-ranked Qi cultivator was far from having the ability to abstain from food. Especially when the people around him were eating heartily, the hunger in his stomach doubled, so Zhu Qin angrily glared at the fatty who broke the deadlock. Wen Bao was startled and almost dropped the wild fruit on the ground. "This, senior brother Zhu Qin, what's wrong?" Zhu Qin scolded, "You're eating handouts, yet you're eating so happily." In the end, before Wen Bao could say anything, the two female cultivators suddenly choked and couldn't swallow anymore. Their gazes towards Zhu Qin were naturally not polite. Even if there was a difference in treatment between the inner and outer sect disciples, they were still not allowed to have a temper in their hearts, right? Zhu Qin wanted to slap his own mouth. He offended 2 junior sisters for no reason. Why the F***ck? Damn it, it's all because of that idiot Wang Lu. 2 years ago, I didn't like him, he's really a scourge. Look at that faint smile on his face. Sinister. Especially sinister. Although he kept shouting silently in his heart, the situation was stronger than he was, so Zhu Qin had no choice but to endure the hunger and treat it as a kind of cultivation. However, after a while, a certain fatty beside him spoke again. "Sigh, just eating fruit is not enough. How good would it be if there was meat? F***ck, your senior brother is starving to the point of being an idiot, yet you, this idiot, are still thinking about meat. You might as well cut your own belly with a knife, it's not inferior to the best beef brisket." Listening to Wen Bao's innocent words, Yu Yun and Huiying couldn't help but laugh. Even if it's the small clear sky peak, it's still a place for experiential learning, not a place for everyone to travel. This time, thanks to senior brother Wang Lu's blessing, we can eat to our heart's content. Otherwise, even if we came here, we would only be able to fill our stomachs. However, at this time, as the top student of Spirit Sword Sect, Wang Lu was not satisfied with eating fruit, so he stood up and said, "How about I go hunting?" Hunting. This small clear sky peak is so rich, there must be a lot of birds and beasts here. I'll go hunt a few hares and wild boars for everyone to eat. Wang Lu said and was about to leave. Yu Yun and Huiying quickly stopped him. "Senior brother, don't be impulsive. There are indeed a lot of birds and beasts in this small clear sky peak, but they're not for eating." Wang Lu was surprised. If they're not for eating, then they're for treating them like family? Is our Lingjian school an animal protection organization? Yu Yun wryly smiled. "Senior brother, you misunderstood. What I mean is, the strength of the beasts in this small clear sky peak is extraordinary. Especially now that we've entered the full moon valley, the restriction spell has slightly loosened, so there are already a lot of level 2 monsters wandering nearby." Level 2 monsters? So what? Yu Yun was helpless. "Senior brother, you're a knowledgeable person, how could you ask such a stupid question?" The strength of a level 2 monster was generally between the peak of body refining stage and the first or second level of Qi cultivating stage. Of course, for the cultivators of Spirit Sword Sect who had a relatively solid foundation and a high-level cultivation method, it didn't matter if they were at the first or second level. However, in any case, they were almost at the same level as this experiential learning team. If they encountered one of the stronger ones, even Yu Yun, who was at the 6th level of Qi cultivating stage, would not be able to defeat them. In the end, this experiential learning was not for the cultivators to crush their opponents with their cultivation level advantage. In a normal experiential learning in the small clear sky peak, the main theme was to lurk and survive. There were level 2 monsters in the Full Moon Valley, and when they approached the Azure Dragon Gorge, even level 2 monsters might come out. Hunting your sister. After listening to the explanation, Wang Lu was extremely surprised. So that's how it is, I really didn't know. The points of the 9 regions monsters elective course are too low, so I'm too lazy to take it. It seems like I have to carefully make up for it when I get back. Yu Yun was almost powerless. Nonsense, the 9 regions monsters elective course is a compulsory course for cultivators. So although the little fox couldn't break through Wang Lu's defense, Wang Lu also couldn't do anything to this little thing. But it didn't matter, Wang Lu didn't have any other strong points, but he was very confident in his endurance. Before, he didn't know the soft cloud sword, but with just his winding step, he was able to exhaust the bear on Nanfei's peak. Now with the purple myrtle sword in his hand, this little fox can wait to be exhausted to death, ha ha ha. In the blink of an eye, one person and one fox had fiercely fought for more than 100 rounds, with no clear winner or loser. But Wang Lu was becoming more and more courageous. Ha ha ha. Who cares what level 2 monster you are, it's only a so-so. Junior brothers and sisters behind me, don't be impatient, I want to fight this little thing one-on-one. At the same time, Yu Yun and his companions were shocked. When Yin tremblingly fished out a 9 regions monster record from her sleeve. Full Moon Fox, level 1 4th grade, flexible, friendly, non-aggressive. When happy, its pupils turn red and it will reveal its fangs. Main use, pet. Chapter 40. The sword light was like lightning, the setting sun was like blood. The fierce battle between Wang Lu and the unknown monster had lasted for a long time. The sun had already set and the curtain of the night was about to fall. Wang Lu was indeed worthy of being a successor disciple of the Spirit Sword sect. His defense was flawless and his endurance was amazing. With only winding steps and soft cloud sword, he was able to block the lightning-fast little fox. At first, the little fox was still grimacing in excitement. However, after several hundred rounds of fierce battle, it became weak and its speed was getting slower and slower. Seeing that his opponent was getting weaker and weaker, Wang Lu let out a long laugh and took a step forward to change from defense to offense. Although he had never learned any offensive martial arts, why would he need to use martial arts to deal with a tired little fox? He just needed to kick it in the head. It was super useful when dealing with the bear, ha ha ha. However, just as he took a step forward, he was stopped by someone. Wang Lu looked up and saw that it was Yu Yun, who was leading the team. This senior inner court disciple looked embarrassed. He hesitantly said, "This, senior brother Wang Lu, I think we should forgive people when possible." Wang Lu was amused. "Just now, you said that this is an experiential learning, not a vacation. How come you've become so sentimental now? Although this little guy looks cute, it might actually be hiding a murderous intention. We must firmly overcome our pity for it and make our move when it's time. You must know that the heaven and earth are heartless and treat all living things as straw dogs." Yu Yun was really helpless and could only smile bitterly. The 2 carefree peak girls also wanted to say something but hesitated. A certain black and white girl, who had always been at odds with Wang Lu, actually wanted to make it clear, "You are indeed a heartless person. Facing a kind and pleasant pet fox, you can even ruthlessly fight it for 100 rounds. You have no shame." However, at this time, there were so many outsiders present, especially Yu Yun and Huaying, his 2 senior brothers and sisters. If he rashly provoked a successor disciple, even if he could gain the upper hand for a moment, he would inevitably be called an idiot by the disciplinary elder. In the past 2 years, he and Wang Lu had countless fights, but they were all hidden in the dark. He had never openly disrespected Wang Lu. So, endure. I must endure it. Even if his belly was about to burst from laughing too hard, and the risk of incontinence had skyrocketed, he still had to endure it. The atmosphere on the field was as strange as it could be. In the face of Wang Lu's outstanding military exploits, no one could say anything. In the end, Yu Yun, who was a little older, took the lead and showed a bleak smile as if he was suffering from constipation. Following behind a group of gradually enlightened qi cultivating stage cultivators, naturally, the pressure was like a mountain. Therefore, on the second night, when Yu Yun found a place to hide in the full moon valley and prepared to rest, he was somewhat distressed. According to the general itinerary, during this 5-day experiential learning, their speed should be increasing day by day. From the entrance of the small clear sky peak to the Azure Dragon Gorge would take 3 days, but the return trip would only take 2 days. The last day was an all-out rapid march. Even he, a 6th-level qi cultivating stage cultivator, had to raise his spirit, not to mention other people. If they didn't use all their strength, they would definitely fall behind. Then, according to Wang Lu's situation, let alone drinking milk, he couldn't keep up. After all, from the beginning, this experiential learning was not prepared for the children of the body refining stage. If not for his identity as a successor disciple, Wang Lu simply wouldn't be qualified to join this team. What should he do? If strictly according to the rules, it was natural to let Wang Lu fend for himself. In any case, the one who signed up for this experiential learning was him, so of course, the consequences should be borne by him. But Yu Yun really didn't want to be so heartless. Even if there were many disputes between Wang Lu and him, they were still fellow disciples. If he could take care of him, then he would try to take care of him. This was also a test of his ability as a leader. If he handled it well, maybe he would get extra sect points when he returned. While he was considering the pros and cons, he saw Wang Lu take the initiative to come over. Yu Yun smiled. "Senior brother Wang Lu, what advice do you have for me?" Wang Lu said, "Little Yu, according to today's pace, I don't think I can keep up with the team." Yu Yun quickly shook his head. "You flatter me, senior brother, you are too modest." Actually, speaking up to here, he was stuck. Actually what? Actually, with your second stage body refining stage, you really can't keep up. Yu Yun was, after all, a kind and honest person. His ability to lie was still not good enough. In the end, he could only awkwardly giggle to cover it up. Wang Lu didn't feel the slightest bit offended. "So I think, at this time, I should carry forward the spirit of the clumsy bird flying first." Yu Yun was surprised. "Clumsy bird flying first?" Wang Lu said, "That is, you guys rest here for now. I will set off ahead of time. After you guys set off tomorrow morning, you can catch up with me. We will meet at the entrance of the Azure Dragon Gorge. I can use a simple mathematical model to explain the details of the chase. Little Ming will set off from home at speed A, and after 3 hours, Little Gang will set off at speed B." Yu Yun was not in the mood to listen to Wang Lu's mathematical model. Immediately, he angrily said, "How can this be? Senior brother, you are really indulging in fantasy. After we arrive at the full moon valley, there will be dangers everywhere. Even I don't dare to walk alone. I must have junior sister Huiying's cooperation to ensure my safety. Senior brother, if you go alone, you will simply die." Wang Lu explained, No, junior brother, you think too much. I only put forward such a proposal because I have absolute confidence." "Absolute confidence? Please explain." Wang Lu then said, "It's like this. Just now, I borrowed junior sister Wen Yin's 9 Regions monster book, and then roughly read it. I have a general understanding of the monsters that I might encounter in the full moon valley, so the rest of the journey will be very safe." Yu Yun was speechless. "Good, you're a top student, you're awesome. You're only in the body refining stage, but you already have a photographic memory. After reading the book, you can clearly remember all the monsters in the clear sky peak. The problem is, what's the use of this? Do you really think that knowledge is power? Wang Lu spread out his hands. Then what do you say? Do you want to carry me? If the rules allowed it, Yuyun really wanted to carry him. The problem was, unless it was necessary, the senior brother absolutely could not provide any help. This, Yu Xiniao's divine walking technique, Wang Lu waved his hand. Forget it. Her magical power is so pitiful. She can only use it on herself and Wen Yin. If I help her, she might collapse. Yuyun could only smile wryly. Indeed, limited by their cultivation level, the divine walking technique was simply not feasible. If it was feasible, then he wouldn't have to worry about it. That's why I'm going on the road ahead of time. I really don't know what you're so conflicted about. At this point, Yuyun was indeed speechless, but he did not intend to give up his own idea. I'm sorry, senior brother, I still can't agree. Damn, did I just say those words in vain? While the two were arguing, they suddenly heard Huiying's stern voice. Everyone be careful. Something is approaching. Everyone was startled. They all stood up, some arranged arrays, and some cast spells. Although they were still in a panic, they had already begun to show some order. In just one day, they had made such progress, which was enough to make people feel gratified. However, Yuyun's complexion was dignified. He didn't say a word. The sword in his hand slightly trembled, showing its master's high tension. In order to be on the safe side, Huiying deliberately wrapped the cloud silk around Yuyun's finger. Therefore, when Huiying noticed the abnormality, Yuyun also realized that the monster that was coming this time was not a small matter. Most of the monsters in the small clear sky peak were not aggressive. Unless a cultivator mistakenly entered their core territory, they would not fight. Moreover, there were very few monsters that dared to take the initiative to find trouble with cultivators. However, this time, the monster that broke through the cloud silk was clearly prepared. In the Full Moon Valley, there was such a strong aggressive monster. Yuyun only knew one kind. And when he saw the branches and leaves of the distant woods tremble, and a small hazy green shadow suddenly flashed, he suddenly realized that his guess was right. Be careful, it's the ghost monkey. As soon as his voice fell, Huiying had already raised a golden dagger, and a sharp golden light burst out from the tip of the dagger, sweeping in all directions. The black shadow in the woods issued a sharp scream. The hazy green shadow that was used to cover its body twisted, and a hole was torn open, revealing its true appearance. It was a dark green, bark-like skin, and a ghost-like monkey-like monster. Its two huge eyes revealed a deep-seated hatred and killing intent against living creatures. It was the ghost monkey that Yuyun mentioned. The ghost monkey of the small clear sky peak was born from absorbing the spiritual energy of the wood element and the resentment of the dead. It was one of the most dangerous monsters. Although it was small in size, it was good at witchcraft. Moreover, it could gather people and drive other monsters. Every time a ghost monkey was seen, it meant that it was already surrounded by at least 4 or 5 monsters. In the past, more than 70% of the casualties in the small clear sky peak were related to the ghost monkey. Therefore, when they saw the ghost monkey, the 2 senior cultivators immediately went all out. Huiying used the 5 elements golden sword to break the ghost monkey's wood element escape technique. Then, she used the cloud silk to quickly gather the invisible silk threads that were buried in the surroundings, tightly wrapping the exposed ghost monkey like a light blue cocoon. Go! Yuyun immediately released his flying sword and hit the blue cocoon. When the sword light collided, it turned into a gust of wind, pushing the blue cocoon far away. The ghost monkey was a category 2 4th or 5th rank monster. Not only did it have a variety of body protection techniques, but its green skin was also as hard as iron and stone, so it was not easy to kill. In a moment of desperation, the 2 level 6 chi cultivating stage cultivators couldn't instantly cast a thunderous spell, but they could use small spells to banish the ghost monkey from the battlefield. After banishing the ghost monkey, Yuyun and Huiying were slightly relieved. Just now, they used a set of combo attacks, which was the essence of their predecessor's experience. Once they encountered the ghost monkey, they must first banish it, and then deal with the puppets it commanded. Otherwise, if they kept a cunning and intelligent commander, the difficulty of the battle would increase exponentially. However, this time, Yu Yun and the others' luck was really bad. Although the ghost monkey was banished, the puppets it commanded were still there. Moreover, this time, the strength of the puppets far exceeded their expectations. After retrieving the remaining flowing cloud silk, Hui Ying's face turned pale. 2 stonewood apes, Category 2 3rd rank, we are really lucky, senior brother Yu Yun. The strength of a Category 2 3rd rank monster was already better than a level 6 Qi cultivating stage cultivator. Although Yu Yun and Hui Ying could make up for their lack of strength and their odds of winning were more than 60 to 70%, there were too many variables and the risk was unbearable. Yu Yun said with a sinking voice, "Don't fight them. I will stop them here. You take your junior brothers and sisters and retreat first. This experiential learning must be stopped." Hui Ying didn't hesitate. "Take care, senior brother." Then she immediately turned around and called out to the others, "Everyone, use your divine walking technique and follow me back. As long as we leave the end of the full moon valley, there will be a spell to stop them." The several young cultivators didn't argue. In an emergency, they must strictly follow the instructions of their leader. If they spoke any more nonsense, their sex points would be deducted by 10. On the other side, Yu Yun, who was facing the 2 monsters, generously smiled. He took out 2 long swords from his back and inserted them into the ground. "At this time, I really should be glad that I have the compound spirit root of metal and earth. At least in terms of defense, I still have some specialty." Yu Yun smiled, reached out his hand, dipped a little bit from the medicine bottle on his waist, smeared it on his lips, and then forcefully blew on it. The 2 stonewood apes turned their heads at the same time and stared at Yu Yun. These giant apes had the earth and wood elements as their foundation, so they had extraordinary strength and tenacious vitality. However, their brains were relatively poor, so it was easy for them to be distracted. Just smeared with the meat powder was enough to make them treat him as a delicious meal. The giant apes roared and rushed over, but when they were 10 steps away, Yu Yun shouted loudly. Both of his hands grasped the long swords on the ground, and his magical power surged out. The next moment, a circle of metal and stone walls rose from the ground, enveloping 1 person and 2 beasts. While Yu Yun was dragging the 2 stonewood apes, Hui Ying didn't hesitate to use her magical power to support everyone with the swift technique. For a moment, everyone felt that their bodies were as light as a swallow, and their legs were filled with incredible power. Don't waste the time that senior brother Yu Yun has bought for everyone. Follow me closely and don't fall behind. Hui Ying said in a low voice, but she didn't dare to look at the metal and stone prison where the 2 stonewood apes were imprisoned. Although senior brother Yu Yun appeared calm and collected, he was only a level 6 Qi cultivating stage cultivator, facing 2 monsters at the same time. He must have risked his life. She hated that she had the wind spirit root, so she wasn't good at defense. At this time, the cloud thread in her hands suddenly shook. Hui Ying incredulously looked behind her. A huge figure slowly walked out from the woods. It had the head of an ox, the body of a lion, and the tail of a leopard. Its body was like a small elephant, and every step it took caused the ground to slightly tremble. Moongazer, roar. At this moment, Hui Ying's mind went blank. This kind of rank 2 first rank monster was known as the most powerful vicious beast in the Azure Dragon Gorge. How could it appear here? It was impossible for a mere ghost monkey to control such a big guy. What should she do now? The Moongazer roar was a rank 2 first rank beast. Even a level 4 Qi cultivating stage cultivator wouldn't dare to say that he had a high chance of winning against it. If it was a one-on-one fight, she could use her advantage in speed to fight it, but now there were 5 junior brothers and sisters around her. Once she left, it would be equivalent to throwing the threat to them. What should she do? While she was hesitating, she suddenly heard someone open his mouth. Huh? Another moongazer roar? Interesting, put it here, I want to fight it one-on-one. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.